The shirt that's my first year. Let me send out today. I think so we just need to
I just want to let you guys 6 years, so we don't need to act on it right now. And I sent it to the renovation committee too, just so they're being straight up.
different effort, but I get that a lot. I get that a lot, yeah. Yeah, I'm from Oregon, Pennsylvania. You've heard of that? Small town, Oregon.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised. Interesting. You would be familiar with that fabric though. So that is where my, I guess, ancestors are. You boys kind of feel around that area. My dad grew up in Pennsylvania. I know exactly where they are. That's right. Small world.
Yeah, you're accepting it, because there's a separate form for the owner and Jack.
Is that right?
Yeah, the group already voted on it, so.
If you go by and say,
It's a good.
Oh, sure.
it's like every my house.
Actually, I think I'm just, they receive. So
Yeah, they've got it marked right there, Sam.
Yep, here. Oh, they got pictures.
Hard to imagine a wagon repair facility. up there in that area.
They could imagine us.
Jeff, you ready?
I think so. I don't know if the YouTube screen is on, but it says it's.
All right, let's go.
Welcome, everybody. So who all do we have? I see Joe is on there and Tim is on there.
We do have some people joining us remotely. Vincent is not able to be here, so he is in remotely.
So that's half pay, right?
I think it's a quarter.
Well,
He can hear us. He's smiling. Okay, good.
We have a stream in the other room, running this. Zoom.
I can hear you.
These are, this is the stream that's in the other room. The rest of them are the folks that are here. Remotely.
All right.
They don't have people to talk, they're just hearing what we have to say. The only microphone is up here in the ceiling. Sandy said she could hear it okay in the other room, so I assume that others are just in here it's okay.
All right. Sounds good. Well, let's get started. Chris, your first thing on the agenda tonight. Now, once we're seated and we're mostly 6 feet apart, except for you two women over there, I don't know, 6 feet apart. Once you're far enough, then, especially if you're going to talk, you take your mask down so we can hear you. That'd be great.
Well, good evening, everybody. First off, we'll get your architects, for those of you that don't know me. Tonight I have with me Chip Kelly from our office, and George McDonough from HF Plans, representing mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Jim is currently handing out our narrative. We've got 25 copies with us tonight. But I'll leave those with you in the box, so if anybody else wants a hard copy, you're welcome. Jeff actually has the PDF of the document. He has a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation that we're doing tonight. He also has a copy of all the drawings that we brought with us tonight. They're rolled up in the back. A schematic specification, which we also have for you a hard copy of. And then also on the thumb drive that Jeff has, he also has the geotechnical report. Part of it is in the document we got put in the front of it. waiting. One of the things that came from our office the last minute that Jim came up with, notice the bollards we have out front? Here on the website, one of the things we noticed was that 11 bollards out front. Thought it'd be kind of interesting, those might be named with each one of the school districts' names on them. Go to the next slide, please. As far as the design team,
I'm learning as I go here, guys.
there we go. JOC Architects for the architect. We hired Stanford Surveying and Engineering for the civil engineering. They're doing all the stormwater management for us. Keystone Structural Solutions is our structural engineer. As I mentioned, George McMillan is representing HF Lens. And then we hired a kitchen consultant with Farland Kissworks. Now,
Can we turn off the stuff on this photos?
Last big point, I'm not sure.
as far as project information, the first 3 slides, I think, have most of the information that everybody's really looking for. Later on, we'll get into the drawings and everything else. But right now, we have approximately 755 students fit into the building. Site acres, approximately 146 acres. The existing square footage is approximately 101,000 square feet. We're adding 21,210 square feet for a total building square footage of 122,294. Next slide, please. As far as cost, project cost, we've estimated the renovation to be approximately $20 million. The new addition, $5.5 million, for a total construction cost of $25,500,000. A&E fees at 6% are $1.5 million. We have 7% for furniture and equipment, which is approximately $1.7 million. We have a contingency of 15%, which includes the building permit, civil engineering, the geotechnical services, change orders, and the clerk of the works. And that's $3.8 million. And brings us to a total preliminary estimate of construction cost, $32,500,000. Next slide, please. As far as our first proposed schedule, we were originally supposed to meet a month ago. I know it's a little late. We're into July now. Both George and Jim around, we can still keep with this schedule. You know, we're a little bit of a month behind. I think we're a little further ahead than we probably be at this point. So design development will be in September. Construction documents will be ready in December and be out to bid in February of 2020. Or 2021, excuse me. And then construction start in May and final completion in August of 2022. So we're proposing about a year and a half of construction.
Did a nice job, Jeff.
What we have here are all the different clusters that we have in the building, business and retail. The majority of the programs within the existing building are being expanded. One of those big reasons is to accommodate for larger new theory rooms, which is a PE requirement. Most of those rooms fall under 660 square feet and they need to be larger. Culinary, we're adding a changing area and a lab. Early childhood is actually 2 programs with a new prep room and a lab space. Health, we're adding new programs with new labs. Tourism and hospitality has a new lab and office. A new program for the construction cluster, which could possibly be an HVAC program. Computer programming was actually reduced. Computer networking was doubled in size. We have 4 new programs. For those of you that remember, we were trying to leave some flex space within the building for classrooms. And those are under business management and the IT cluster. One of those 4 classrooms is actually the transition center coming over from the regional skill center. And that contains the theory room, the example room, an office, custodian, and a potential cafe. We would also be expanding the administration offices and increasing the restroom as required to accommodate the occupant load for the building and ADA ADA requirements. Next slide. As far as the architectural narrative within the building, originally, for those of you that don't know, was built in 1968. I don't consider it that old since I was born in '67. It does need to be redone as most of you know. It was renovated in 1992, which was quite some time ago. HVAC improvements in 1999 in certain areas, but there's been no major changes in this building since. The interior route is fine for ADA. We don't have any steps, ramps, or anything we have to deal with. It's just wonderful. The quiet areas are actually separated from the noisy areas, which is excellent. The buses are separated from the cars. The traffic pattern actually works quite well, as it is now. We have a single main entry point and a bus arrival point. The building is one-story steel frame on spread footers. We do want to replace all of the interior and exterior doors, and want to replace the windows. One of the things that you need to do as part of this is insulate the mezzanine walls. So if you not have any insulation, we need to improve our exterior envelope so George can size his equipment appropriately and make it smaller if necessary. We intend to replace the roof, which is currently out of warranty, replace the exterior metal fascia and soffit, paint walls, replace flooring, marker boards, smart boards, and tack boards. Next slide, please. As far as design goals, we want to address the infrastructure issues, as you know that we have. You've seen the pipes that's all routed out within the wall, and the plumbing and the HVAC systems are out of date. We want to be compliant with the latest building codes and life safety codes. New mechanical and electrical systems, and updated building technology and security, which part of that we're doing now. And just so you know, any of the items that we're using here at the Regional Skills Center will be reused as part of this project. As far as phasing, the beauty of this project is we start with the new construction, so we have a space to move the students into while we renovate the rest of the building. We build the new construction first, then move the kids into that space, and then we can go and renovate the existing spaces. Most of you that know me know I like to have alternates. One of the reasons we like to have alternates is in case the project were to be over budget, we want to be able to bring it back in, and we want to be able to create some options so that if we want to add things or delete them, it's usually easier to delete. And usually I see people delete and not add. But things we'd be thinking about would be different types of roofing systems, windows, and then any items George may have as well, whether it be LEDs or changing some type of HVAC system. As far as design philosophy, we need to reflect the ever-changing needs of our career industry, as you know, which is changing as we speak. Reinforce the clustering of disciplines, which is pretty good right now. We're moving a couple programs around so they are next to each other. One of the big things I think would be important as part of this is to incorporate the student work into the building and also let people see further into these spaces. We have these double loaded corridors where people can't see what these kids are doing. There's no place for these kids to display the work they've done. I think it's very important. And one of the things we're going to try and do, and you'll see in the renderings we have, is put glass in the corridors and glass through the theory room so that you can see into these spaces. One of the things I would love to do is actually create like smaller pod spaces or nooks, but now with security and safety, I really can't do that. Mr. Emmerich, one of the things I think about is your library at Waterford Elementary School that has a sawtooth front. That's really not something now with safety and security we would think about, but it'd be a nice way to display the students' work. So it might just have to be flat. You'll see in the rendering how we did it, how we're going to try and take care of it, so we still keep the building safe. And lastly, one of the other things we want to do is provide natural light as much as possible so we don't have to rely on lighting. Next slide, please, Jeff. As far as safety and security, as I mentioned, we're doing some of those things now. We would be reusing a lot of that equipment, doors and frames for the renovation. This is all part of the Act 44. One of the things we need to do is number all the exterior doors, provide additional exterior lighting, use closed circuit TV and door contacts to monitor the exterior doors, install impact film on our exterior doors, signage for wayfinding, peepholes and vision glass on exterior doors, and a lot of the handles on the doors. We have a pair of doors. We're only going to have one handle so somebody can't put a 2x4 through it or a chain on it. You only have one handle. That's it.
One of the things we were talking about as well, which some of the school districts I know in this room have done, is a second egress out of a classroom. It can be done in one of two ways. We can do it with a window. Now that's going to be tough out of the labs when the windows are up a full story. So we might have to put an extra exit door in, which I think in this time we might want to think about doing it, having a second exit or having a second egress window within the room. We'll have a direct visual from the office to the front door, unlike what we have now. And the layout provides to secure sections of the building for after hours activities. So if anything goes on after night, we can shut certain of the parts of the building down so the whole building doesn't have to be occupied. As far as energy efficiency, one of the things George can tell you too, a lot of this energy efficiency is code required now. We have certain parameters that we have to meet no matter what. At one time, we didn't have to. The code wasn't that stringent. We were following another code, ASHRAE, and it was much less stringent. And when the new code came in, we finally had to become more code efficient. And believe it or not, it's going to get even worse in the next 6 years. Create a tight exterior envelope. One of the things I mentioned was we want to insulate as much as we can around the perimeter so we have a good building envelope. That'll help reduce the size of the mechanical systems. We will increase the R value on the roof and then add low E double pane insulated windows. All these things contribute to what George needs to do to size all of his equipment. The codes we'll be following are the 2015 International Building Code, the 2015 National Fire Protection Act, and then the IBC ANSI ADA federal law, which you have to follow for the ADA Act. Next slide, please. For civil engineering, as I mentioned, we had Sanford Engineering out, and they've been out and surveyed the site. We have a level and flat site with 2 access points, one from Hammett and one from Oliver, approximately 330 parking spaces and 10 ADA spaces. We do want to increase the width of the drive to the east just because of the buses that travel on it. One of the big things Sanford is working on for us is stormwater management, which we will need because of the additions. We are not going to be able to tie in with the roundabout. Mike Sanford did contact PennDOT, talk to them, and apparently across the street where the cornfield is where they're putting their stormwater retention basin. We're not allowed to take anything off site. They're not going to make any accommodations. They're not far enough along, but Mike said they're not going to work with us on it, that it's all ours. As many of you know that have been here in spring, we have a lot of clay. So come spring, we have a lot of water sitting around, which is a concern for me when we go to building construction in the spring. We are proposing a rain garden just south of the Regional Skill Center, which we'll show you when we get to the site plan. It would be out of sight, so nobody has to see it. It would be a rain garden, and it would provide the rate and volume controls for the stormwater that we need for the additions. Next slide, please.
Chris, are you saying there's 330 spots now?
That's
Or there will
correct.
be 30?
No, there's 330 now.
Is that enough? For the amount of kids that are driving here, is that enough?
I have not seen any overflows of parking here.
Okay,
We've never heard any concerns, Andy, over it not being enough.
just wondered, I mean, there's gonna be more kids driving to school and driving themselves this year.
That may change things, but up to this point, we've not seen it.
We usually see that in the spring,
Yeah,
that there's double the amount of cars.
yeah,
As far as the geotechnical review, we actually had some good news, which we were pleased about. No extravagant footings, no caissons, no bell type footers, a spread footer. And the only thing you're recommending we do is we remove 18 inches below that footer, which is 3 foot. We want to remove another 18 inches and take out the bad clay, silty soil that's underneath. We've had buildings where we've actually had caissons maybe 20, 30 feet deep. That's not the case here, so that's good news. The one thing that does concern me, that we do have 2 issues, is the wet soil we have, in particular in the spring. I know, Dell, we've had a couple of tractors stuck. Spring is always tough in this area because everybody in this room knows, anybody that has clay knows that the water's not going anywhere. So that might be tough. One of the things we'll do with the general construction, we put it right in the specifications that the contractor is responsible for pumping those footings and keeping them dry. They'll fill them, they'll backfill them, tamp them, compact them. So that'll be their responsibility. We'll make sure we have that in the specifications. And it's not uncommon to undercut that footer by 18 inches either. Sometimes we find bad soil, but we'll make it part of the specifications and it'll be part of the project. Next slide, please, Jeff. As far as structural, the geotechnical evaluation obviously dictated what we have to do for the structural. It's just going to be typical footer. As I mentioned, we have to take that 18 inches out. It'll be a typical steel deck, steel frame, sitting on traditional spread footings. There was no surprises there, and KSS feels comfortable with everything the geotechnical engineer has given us to date. Now with that, I'd like to turn this over to George from Mechanical, Electrical, and Plumbing. And George, do you mind if they have any questions? Because I know George is going to bring up several options to you that he's went through with Dell and give his best recommendation. And I'm just thinking maybe while George is up here, it might be a good time. If you do have some questions about the HVAC system, you might want to just ask it now if you'd like.
Sure. Please feel free to ask any questions as I go through the presentation. As we start talking about the mechanical and electrical systems, we understand historically when a building opens, more than 80% of the complaints or issues that you have during the course of that building is with mechanical and electrical systems, whether it be complaints because things are too hot or too cold, things aren't operating properly, things are undersized, oversized. We know that these are reoccurring issues, and that's what we want to work through the process now, try to mitigate those issues and minimize them as we go through the process. So there are a couple of key items with the mechanical electrical design that I'd like to touch on this evening. Energy efficient design, that's a big concern, big topic for everybody because that is ongoing cost associated with operating. Some key design features. I'd like to take you a little bit through the process on things that we look at as we're evaluating which energy efficient measures make sense, which may not. Talk a little bit about the energy usage and how things break up based on statistics in the past from other buildings where we see a lot of the energy usage in the buildings. And then talk about the proposed HVAC system. As Chris mentioned, we have gone through several options, working with Dell and the folks here at the school. We think we have a pretty good option for you, but we certainly would look at anything else if need be. So, Jeff, if you don't mind. Okay, some of the key design features. First, design for the future. We want to make sure that as we go through the process designing the mechanical and electrical systems, you have some flexibility in the future to make changes as program changes are made, as you may expand or need additional services into area, things like that. So we want to make sure that there is some flexibility and spare capacity associated with the systems. Maintainability and serviceability. That's a big item, and that ties right into energy efficiency as well. You need to be able to adequately maintain the equipment, service it on a regular basis, and have a good PM program to maintain a good operating piece of equipment or system. So that's something we need to look at as we go through the process to make sure Dell and his folks can access the equipment sufficiently, and it doesn't take 3 guys to take out a light bulb or something like that. Cost. Cost is always a big factor, but not only the initial construction cost and initial installation cost, but also the cost over the lifetime of the system or equipment and the operating cost. So we want to take a look at all of those factors and provide you with the information to make informed decisions on which way you would like to go based on that data. And lastly, but most importantly probably, is energy efficiency. Energy efficient equipment as well as the systems. Unfortunately, sometimes folks think because they bought the most efficient piece of equipment that it's going to operate and get them the best operation and save the most money. Really, in reality, you have to look at the overall system approach and how the system operates to maximize your efficiency. So those are things that we're looking at as we go through this process. Jeff. Just talking about energy usage, I pulled some information from Department of Energy, just average information for an average school, just to give you an idea of where a majority of the energy usage is in a facility. And the reason it's important to us is we want to take this information, look at it, see where the big energy hogs are, and try to address those first for you. In this particular instance, the two that jump out at us automatically are lighting, as well as the space heating and ventilation. So those are definitely two of the items that we want to look at and try to hit hard and bring that energy usage down for you to save on operating costs. Other things that we'll be looking at will be domestic hot water. The approach in the past has been to have large storage tanks, store a large quantity of water on site, and you continuously have to heat that water 24/7, 365 days a year. When in reality, that water is only necessary for a short period of time. So we look at alternate ways of accomplishing the same thing. Jeff? Thank you. So the next few slides I put in here just to give you a little idea of what we're looking at from a design perspective when we're evaluating the building. A lot of folks, a lot of times think, we're applying general practices or general rules of thumb from an engineering standpoint, but we're actually looking at a lot of different factors. This diagram points out a lot of those. Starting at the top, we have to take into account the roof, what type of insulation, thickness, insulation values we have to work with. The exterior walls, what type of infiltration are we looking at? As Chris mentioned, looking at adding insulation to walls in various portions of the building are significantly going to help the operating cost as we go through this. The windows are a big item. And contrary to popular belief, sometimes you don't always have to buy the most expensive window. It doesn't have to be a triple pane armored window to get your best values. Those are things that we look at as we go through this process. The one item that I do want to point out is ventilation. We have codes and regulations that require us to bring in a certain amount of outside air so that the students don't go to sleep and we have bad things happen. But when you bring that air in, you also have to heat and cool it. So that can be a lot of energy usage, and we evaluate that as well. Now then we start to break it down into how we look at heating and cooling loads and what are the biggest impacts. I mentioned ventilation. If you look on the photo there, ventilation accounts for more than 57% of your heating load. So that is a big item that we can address in several different ways, and we definitely want to address. Then you have windows, infiltration, roof, all of those factors to take into account as we design, size, and select the systems. Want to go to the next one, Joe?
Yeah, I thought you were ready.
Okay, thank you. And this slide is just the opposite. This is on the cooling side. Again, you can see the ventilation, the impact that it has on the cooling load. So the more air we bring into the building, we have to make sure we heat and cool that air. Again, we also have factors with windows, exterior walls, roof, lights, and of course the occupants in the space that we need to account for. So why is this information important to us? Well, a couple of reasons. One, it identifies areas for us that we may need to address. For instance, addressing the windows. As Chris mentioned, we're looking at replacing the windows. It eliminates areas that we may not need to address. We may find out that the roof has insulation, sufficient insulation, that it would need to be changed. It also provides us the necessary information to analyze and let you know what your rate of return on the investment would be. For instance, changing from a double pane window to a triple pane window. How much will you gain and how much money will you save and how long will it take you to recruit that? That's what all of these things allow us to do, is provide you with that information to make an informed decision. It also, very importantly, provides us with the information to size the systems properly. I have been in a lot of buildings where I've seen central equipment that has been 1.5 or 2 times the necessary size. And that has happened on a regular basis. You know, and some folks take the approach that, well, I have spare capacity. Yes, you do, but you're also not operating the equipment most efficiently. So it's important for us to be able to dial that in for you so that you can optimize the energy efficiency of the system. So some of the things that we're looking at as far as energy efficient features, windows and window shading. We'll be working with Chris and his group, trying to come up with what might be the best route and bring that option to you. Roof and wall insulation, as Chris mentioned, we don't want to oversize the equipment, so we'll be paying close attention to that. Demand control ventilation. As I mentioned in the previous slides, ventilation air from the outside, you have to heat and cool it. That is a large portion of your energy usage. If we can employ different technologies such as carbon dioxide sensors in large rooms such as this, that monitors the level and adjusts the outside air to a level that's needed rather than a fixed open position, that will help you save energy down the line. So we're looking at those technologies as well. LED lighting and lighting controls. Lighting is a big portion of the energy usage in a building. Going to the LED technology and the lighting controls, we've decreased it 30 to 35% in buildings. One particular project that comes to mind, we were able to decrease the number of lighting fixtures in the building by about 350 fixtures. And that was just being able to take them out and still provide adequate light level and give them better control. So we take a hard look at that, as well as the technologies associated with it. And a key factor with the lighting controls, you know, a lot of buildings have lighting controls. A lot of them are way too complicated for people to operate. So the lights simply get left on. What we want to do is find that balance to where something that provides you with the necessary payback and is functional and people can maintain it and use it. Low flow plumbing fixtures. We'll be looking at that. Optimizing the domestic hot water system. As I mentioned, looking at less storage and more on-demand usages. Again, because domestic hot water is usually not needed just certain periods of the day. So why heat it 24/7, 365? High efficiency HVAC equipment, high efficiency boilers, chillers, meeting or exceeding the current regulations and code requirements for efficiency ratings on equipment. Variable frequency drives on the pumps, making sure that the pumps adjust and only utilize the energy that they need rather than running them on all the time. Building management system, as well as time of day scheduling, not only for the HVAC, but as well as the lighting. That's as important as any component in energy efficiency, being able to determine when the systems operate, when they need to operate, and when they don't need to operate.
Questions later or not? Have a question through the stream.
I think we can ask them as we go here, right?
Sure.
I've got one then when you're getting ready for the stream. You're talking about the ventilation. Code calls for a percentage of, I know it's in code for how much we have to bring in, but with this demand control, can you supersede that code, or is that allowed in code?
It is permitted, yes.
So we can drop that amount as long as you're sensing it.
We can drop it as long as we're sensing it. With the CO2 sensors, they want to keep it above or below a certain level. So the code permits you to take it down to a certain level. And then once you see a certain level, it will start to adjust and open the dampers and allow more in. You know, a lot of times classrooms, size the classrooms for 30 students, but there may only be 10 or 12 or 14 in there at a time. And the old way of doing things, you would have to open it up to the full for the 30 and basically run it all day. Well, now with the different technologies, you have the ability to make that adjustment. So it can prove to be, you know, very economical. It's a very simple approach. One sensor in a room pretty much handles it. And it's all automatic. You don't have to do anything.
Second question I have is on a big building like this, we have, you're talking about domestic hot water. Do we have one heater?
We have different systems. We have, there's 3 big tank heaters in the building now. 2 of them basically handle the bulk of the building, and then there's one just for culinary, and then there's 2 for heaters in there for dishwashing. So,
You're on demand. You can place those strategically throughout the building instead of having. You're not
That's
gonna
correct.
Try to pipe as much, probably even as we are doing now.
Exactly. And we've done it both ways, but you're right, because the building is so big, we'd like to try to break it up into areas. That way the reaction time for the hot water system is better for that area. Trying to do something the whole way back at the boiler room and pumping out to the new additions, it can be done just like it has in the past, but you're wasting a lot of energy to do that, because not only do you have the pumping that you have to do, but you have the losses in the pipe, losses in the tank, and it just takes that much more when you may need it for an hour a day or 2 hours a day.
Question from Ken related in Washburn Area School District. Did we consider a guaranteed energy savings component for the mechanicals?
That's something Chris and I were talking about. With the guaranteed energy savings component, it's a little bit different project delivery. I know a lot of folks in this room may have gone through that process. Typically, when you have a guaranteed energy savings contract, you have it with an energy savings company. And they partner with you over a period of time, whether it be 15 or 20 years. And the way that they're able to give you that guarantee is for that 15 or 20-year period, they're involved in the operation of the systems within the building. Okay. We do a lot of work with ESCO companies. We've done a lot for the districts that are here. It's not something that we do from an engineering standpoint. We work with them. And certainly if you entertained using an ESCO firm, we have worked with them in the past as the engineer of record. And what makes this project a little more difficult for an ESCO firm is the reconfiguration and the additions. In looking at it, because a lot of the programs are shifting, a lot of the floor space is changing, it's a little more challenging to work that ESCO piece, because typically they're on a renovation project where you're doing a one-for-one replacement or upgrading the systems. And that's how it's beneficial for them. With the additions and the reconfiguration, from what I understand, there's a little bit of a gray area on how you would accomplish that. Not saying it's not possible.
Just not typical for a visa like that,
Right.
with this size of an addition.
Okay. Okay. Jeff, you mind switching to that? So I just wanted to talk a few minutes about the heating and ventilating system. Several of the options that we looked at, and we've been working diligently with Dell to make sure, because there's a lot of different factors that we want to look at. Obviously, one being energy efficiency, another being maintainability, and service life of the equipment. So it's important to note, though, we looked at 4 different options, but each of the 4 options are energy efficient systems. We were not looking at, things that were just systems to throw in here and get done. We chose 4 different options that are similar in nature, but have a few different components or aspects to it. So the first option we looked at were rooftop units with all gas-fired heat and DX cooling. Basically, that would eliminate the need for a central chiller plant. All of the cooling would be done at the rooftop unit. A majority of the heating would be done at the rooftop unit through gas. And then we would also have VAV boxes in the space to give you the zoning that you would want for all of the different areas. And they would have hot water reheat coils in. So you would have small boilers to serve the hot water reheat coils. One of the items or one of the issues that we discussed in looking at that option, one, the equipment may require additional structural support. Based on a majority of the equipment now is within the building, the roof structure may not be designed to handle that new equipment. So essentially, you would be spending additional money to implement that option and not really get anything back out of it. We may need a new natural gas service just because of the size of this building, putting all the rooftop units up there, making them gas. We may have to bring in a new service for that. And then historically, rooftop equipment, especially in this area, is more difficult to maintain. Reality is you're going to have an issue with that when there's a snowstorm or some inclement weather that is going to cause an issue for you.
Question?
Yes, sir.
On the items that you just discussed about the rooftop stuff, and you're saying we may have to upgrade this, we may have to do this. Obviously, all that costs money.
Yes.
So none of those costs would be in what's on page 2 at the beginning of this.
Some of the costs would be in that. Maybe not all of it, depending on, take the gas service, for instance, how far we would have to go and what upgrades we would have to do with the utility. So I would agree with you.
I mean, is that something we would know beforehand before like the project even started?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if all of a sudden we're $1 million over budget because of roof problems.
No, and that's one of the reasons George is giving you the options. You'll see the option you end up with is the most reasonable.
Right. Option number 2, again, looking at rooftop units, except this time looking at hot water coils and chilled water coils, which would put you back to a central plant with the hot water boilers and the chiller. Some of the items or issues that we discuss, again, the equipment may require additional structural support. Roof-mounted equipment is more difficult to service. And then you have a potential for hot water, chilled water coils exterior to the building to freeze. There are ways to remedy that. But if something happens with the antifreeze that you put in there, you don't get the right quantities, you can end up freezing a lot of equipment. Option number 3, air handling units with hot water heat and chilled water coils and terminal units. This option is very similar to what is in the facility today. The difference with this option is we would provide better zoning with more boxes, more hot water coils to break things up a little better than it is today. We would keep the terminal units or replace the terminal units such as unit vents in a number of the classrooms that exist today and maybe add some where necessary. The issues discussed with this, Dale and I talked about the mezzanine, the equipment located on the mezzanine levels work very well for them from a maintenance standpoint. Interior equipment is preferred. Anytime we can get the equipment within the building rather than outside of the building, it's going to increase the life of that equipment. It's easier to maintain. And with the terminal equipment and unit ventilators within the rooms, you always have the potential for noise. If something starts going bad, a fan bearing or something, you have noise in a teaching space. So, that's one of the negative aspects of having the equipment right in the space itself.
Or positive, because then something's wrong.
True.
Option 4, we looked at air handling units with hot water and chilled water coils. VAV boxes to meet all of the zoning requirements and the ductwork. A central high efficiency boiler plant. The way we would size the boilers We would have some spare redundancy capacity for you. That way, if you lost one, you would have multiple smaller boilers that you could take one out of service and still maintain the operation of the facility. A central air-cooled chiller at grade level, so that it would be outside the building, easy to maintain, replace compressors. We would also have multiple units so that you again had some redundancy. You had to take one offline. Any issues that we discussed? Again, the existing mezzanine equipment areas work well. We would look at continuing that into the addition and reusing the mezzanine levels that you currently have. Again, interior equipment was preferred. So the system that we were proposing or considering for this facility is option number 4 with the interior air handling units. You know, it's a very efficient system. We can employ the demand control ventilation with the system and adjust the outside air. We have the equipment within the building, which makes it easier to maintain and increases the life of the equipment. We're able to build some redundancy without oversizing the equipment in the boiler plant and the chiller plant. I mentioned the zoning. I know that there are a number of areas within the building right now where zoning is an issue. Dale has issues with trying to turn certain classrooms on or off. We want to make sure this system is very good to meet those zoning requirements and give individual control throughout the spaces, as well as if you need to add or change things in the future. It's very accommodating that way.
George, you had also talked about life expectancy of different levels of equipment.
Yes.
And can you speak to that on this option versus the other unit ventilator type?
Yeah, unit ventilators, and just to give you a general overview, we usually look at unit ventilators and terminal equipment of having a 15 to 20 year life expectancy. That's usually at the end of the 20-year life cycle. You're looking at, you need replacement, maybe even sooner than that. Rooftop units, 20, 25 years, depending on how bad they get hit with weather, how well they're maintained. You know, it can also be less there, but there are a lot of variables that you don't have control over. The air handling units are modular design. They're mounted inside the building, which gives them 100% protection and increases that life expectancy. So, you know, a lot of times I'll go into a building and you'll see an air handling unit that's been in there for 30 or 40 years. As long as the preventative maintenance program is good and it's well taken care of, you can extend the life of the system. And then from the boxes, VAV boxes and things serving the classrooms and spaces, there's not a whole lot to go wrong with them. I mean, they're very simple, very easy to work on, and relatively inexpensive if you do have to replace any of the parts. Yes, sir.
Those mezzanine mounted air handling units are enormous, and I've heard conversation as part of the renovation, they would require removing part of the roof to get them out. So are these new pieces of equipment, if we went with option 4, easier, smaller, more compact, so that they could be put in and put out without having to disassemble roof?
Yes. They make them now what I call modular design. So you can specify the section widths and things that you need so that they can bring them in pieces, rather than, you know, drop the whole unit like you would with a rooftop unit. So we would make sure as we go through the process that we're specifying the correct equipment to be able to get it in and out, not only for the initial construction, but if Dell needs to take it out in the future, we need to make sure that we have a route to do so.
Which George and I have done in other projects, we've actually installed large doors, whether it be an overhead door or a pair of doors or a pair of 4-foot doors, 4'6" doors in order to accommodate that for the future.
Any other questions?
Did you consider the life cycle costs? I mean, is that
Yes.
something that, I don't know that we've seen it yet, or?
No, you have not seen it yet. We have not run that analysis yet. We will be doing that on these various systems. I can tell you the life cycle cost on the option that we're proposing is going to be less than the rooftop unit options, just because you're dealing with much simpler equipment to deal with. But we will be looking at that as
It'd be
well.
good to have that in the mix.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for George?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. I know, Jeff, I don't think my laser pointer is gonna work on it. does it?
It doesn't work on that screen anyway.
No, okay. Well, traditionally, north is the top of the page. Unfortunately, on this drawing, north is to the right. So north is to the right, south is to the left, the top is east and the bottom is west. So to the east of the very top, the little, yep, you got it right up in there, Jeff. That area right, go to the left just a little bit. That's where the transition center is located, the new addition over the little red area. Yep, there you go.
Thank you.
Then right in the front to the south. Yep, right there, that's the new controlled entrance into the building. And then off to the west, that's actually culinary and machining. Then we have our parking lot, which has to be slightly relocated. And then we have our drive that comes over to the new rain garden. So this is the proposed area of the new rain garden. Everything naturally flows that way. So we're not gonna be pumping anything, we're not pushing anything uphill. It'll actually be the natural flow of the parking lot and of the site to get to that rain garden.
Is that a pipe connecting it, Chris? How's the
Yes.
water get over there?
Yes, there's piping that's connected all the way,
Underground.
correct. Now, it's not the big tanks. We're just using small pipe just to get it over to that rain garden. So that rain garden is gonna be our retention pond.
And it's gonna be hollow. Is it-
Correct.
called
It's
the
not gonna be
rain
that deep.
garden? Yeah.
It's gonna be dry the majority of the time. I will be honest with you, it looks like there's weeds growing. It looks like a weeded area. But it will naturally get rid of the water for us. And the one thing I don't want to do is have a retention pond, because then we end up having to put a fence around it. Somebody could drown in it. You know, there's all kinds of issues with it. Mosquitoes, it becomes a nightmare. So a dry rain garden would be an excellent proposal for this. And the other thing that's really helping us too is the natural flow of the site to that side. Next slide, Jeff.
The rain garden, now the brush hog now, or how they keep it?
No, it'll just naturally grow. So it's just a garden. Once it's planted, you really don't have to do a whole lot of maintenance to it other than making sure that the plants that are in there are growing. I know the DEP will come back, like if they're not growing or if certain areas die out, they're gonna look for you to replace them.
Chris, is this the same as what John McLean has?
Yes, Jim, the one that you have behind the school is a rain garden. So if anybody's familiar with Gerald McLean just did with the DEP, right behind the school, between that and the field is a rain garden.
Is that the one with all the cattails in it?
There's a couple. There's more flowers and daisies.
I just wanted, because I was wondering about maintenance on it. If you answered that question, that was.
This isn't one that you have to maintain. This isn't like one that you have to go out and take care of all the time. The rain garden's pretty self-sufficient. The only thing you have to watch is that nothing dies. You gotta make sure it doesn't dry out.
Well, willow trees.
Well, that's a good point. A red maple would be okay if it was growing in there, but if you get another type of deciduous tree, you might have to pull it out.
Yeah, like willow trees. They
Yeah.
suck the water, but they do get very big.
They do. This is the existing floor plan. 101,000 square feet. It's your traditional double loaded corridor, as everybody knows, you've been through the building. Next slide, please, Jeff. On this slide, I think this gives you a better idea how much demolition we're actually doing. The red area indicates the demo areas, which you notice is heavy to the south side of the building. This would be where our new addition is in here. And that's where we plan on relocating everything that's up there into this space. You notice back here, these theory rooms, the bathrooms, those are all being reconstructed and redone because we have to enlarge them. So I think that gives you a better sense of how much demolition we're actually doing within the building.
Chris, in addition to windows and doors around the perimeter, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You don't really see that around the perimeter on some of these windows because they're up higher, but the windows and then the doors come out too. Exactly right. Next slide, please. This shows us a little bit more definitive of the additions. To the east, we have the transition center. They're in the light gray that you can see. And then to the right is the front addition that we were using, all the materials that we have out front now that we're redoing. And then over here is the culinary and the precision machinery area. Okay, next slide, please, Jeff. Circulation around the building is very good. Once again, you can see the additions in blue. Our rain garden will be down in this area in here. The only place we're really proposing any changes for the parking is in this area right here. And that's to change that parking area that's there now. One of the other things you'll notice on here that we're trying to create too is this smaller addition right here. And that's for cosmetology. So the cosmetology has its own separate entrance. That'd be a separate controlled entrance for them to bring people from the outside in, that they would not have to go through the main entrance. We have separation of buses and cars. We have the buses in the back, cars in the front. As far as we know, parking is fine. We have more than enough. I think most of you know if we start to add parking, that's more stormwater management. Next slide, please, Jeff. Some interior renderings that we've started to do of the spaces. The first one is the computer lab. The next one is a typical theory room. In the back, the gray area where the girl in the yellow is, you can kind of see there's that will be glass looking into the room. Next slide, please. Next two are the automotive technology. That's not supposed to be automotive technology. That should be slides. Well, go back one. I've got a duplicate of a picture there. It should be automotive, but the one to the right is automotive for the lockers and the wash fountains. One of the things we're trying to do there with the guy that has the bag that shouldn't have the bag in a school building is the glass. The glass would be out to the instructional space. So as you're standing at that wash fountain, you can see everybody that's in that locker room and they can be seen vice versa both ways. Next slide, please, Jeff. There we go. Next one is facility maintenance, and on the corridor, you can actually see the glass. I would love to do this like a sawtooth on the right-hand side, but we're actually just putting glass so you can see through into the theory rooms and through that into the instructional space. That's what the windows across the back of that room are, so that you can see into those rooms, which I think is important, because right now you're basically walking down a tunnel and the kids never get to see into these other programs. Next slide, please. Thought I should have something in here about PlanCon. I don't know if anybody's seen anything about PlanCon. I thought it was somewhat humorous during COVID that on April 1st, I received something from PDE. April 1st, which I thought was funny. It was April Fool's Day. I had to wonder at first if it was true. I don't know if you guys have seen this maintenance program they're proposing, but it's phenomenal. They're going to give us money to replace roofs, they're going to give us money to replace doors, all at individual times at whatever amount of money you want, and there's only a 4-step process. That's supposedly what it's going to be. I'll believe it when I see it. As of right now, they did start the moratorium again, so we weren't able to get a project in as of July 1, like we've done for some of you. They extended the benefits for what is it? The charter school rental reimbursements. No money for PlanCon. They extended the moratorium again. Now, the one thing that caught my attention here was they said that the new PlanCon is effective immediately. I called Jim Vogel about that, and that's on that bottom section 2608. J begins new PlanCon program effective immediately. Couldn't explain what that meant. And the new maintenance program begins 7/1/2021. So they're planning on bringing PlanCon back next June or July. I don't know what the effective immediately is. Jim Vogel's supposed to get back to me on that. He said he hasn't gotten an explanation from Harrisburg yet. It eliminates some of the outdated provisions, one of which I think is of interest to you. I know a lot of you have heard me talk for years. A PDE would not let us open a door into a classroom. They're getting rid of that rule. One of the reasons for that is because of security right now. I know you, Dell, you went and put the locks on the doors on the bottom, but if we're interested, we do have the ability now to open the doors in the classroom so a teacher could actually push back on a door. That was the issue we had. At one time, coach said if we had a classroom, the door has to open out, no matter what. It has to open out and it can't open into the corridor. So that's why we create all those recess spaces. Well, guess what? Now those recess spaces are someplace for somebody to hide. So I think that's one of the reasons they're considering this, plus for that defense to push the door shut. So we will have that option. That's the only one I've heard so far. I haven't heard what the other requirements are. I'm not sure everybody in this room is old enough to remember, but this was written during Milton Shap days in 1975. So I was like eight or nine. And the document we have still has draft on it, and that's the one we use. So it's been formally accepted. It still says draft. It's never changed. There's all kinds of bizarre things in there from the 70s. So I'm hoping a lot of those are going to change. That's supposed to happen in the next 60 days. We're supposed to get something new. So I'll keep you posted.
Chris?
Yes.
So if I understand everything you said and what I've read, as of right now, we as a group of board, we cannot count on playing con right now.
I wouldn't.
Right. So, but you mentioned that they're coming out with some new programs. You mentioned like the roof. So if we had a $5 million roof, you could submit that and get reimbursement money just from the roof project only?
That's what they're saying. They're also saying they're going to have like a security program, like the program, what we have, that they'll give us money just for that. It's kind of written, so one-time PlanCon, the only time you want to do PlanCon is when you had a big project. And that's what we preach to everybody. Hey, if you're going to do it all now. Well, they realized we don't have the money to do that anymore. We don't have, schools have went from $2 and $3 million projects to 6 to 7 to 50. High schools are 50 to 100 million. So I think they're realizing we can't do those big projects anymore. We have to bite off these smaller projects. So I think that's what they're trying to do. Now, one of the things I'm thinking in the back of my mind, if something changes, we have these alternates. If this project did come in over budget, maybe we look to that PlanCon after spring and say, you know what, maybe we put the roof off and do the roof as a PlanCon project. Now, that's something we might have to talk to PD about, but I'm thinking that might be an option for us.
Well, wouldn't the roof though be our number one, no pun intended, Achilles heel? Wouldn't we want that first?
To me, your roof is your first defense.
Yeah.
Your roof is, nobody ever sees it. Nobody ever, and that's the
Without
sad
it,
part.
everything else collapses.
It could, over a weekend, as Dell knows, you could do millions of dollars worth of damage in no time.
We saw it at our school with all the leaks we had.
The roof is very, very important. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's one thing I bring up to everybody. And nobody ever sees it. And it is very important to have a good roof.
Thank you.
Certainly. All right, next slide. I think that's it. That was everything. Any questions? As I mentioned, we'll get those.
I got two minor things.
Shoot.
On page 9, you refer to 750 students in grades 9 through 12. It's 10 through 12.
10 through 12.
But that's what you never know if it's gonna change a little.
What's that?
You never know if it's gonna change, so you think ahead.
And the other thing is you refer to the entrances as off of Oliver and Hammond. But your map, that the latest one shows, the entrance to the south is off the Flower.
Hammond, Flower. Unless you got that wrong from Sanford. Thank you, Jim.
Hey, Jeff, can we go back to the schematic, proposed floor plan, looking at the whole thing? Chris, I wonder, can you walk us through, you talked about culinary. Culinary is gonna run back or go to the new section.
Correct.
Can you just give us a general where the different pods are there and what's?
Oh, sure.
I've heard about 3 different presentations and I don't know where we landed on. I guess that's fine.
You want to know where the clusters are?
Yeah, kind of where the clusters are.
Because unfortunately, our things.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It's so small. That's what we brought large drawings with you. And tomorrow we'll email out. Well, Jeff has them now. The PowerPoint. He also has all the drawings. We'll set that up. Maybe we'll put it on I don't know how, we'll get it to you guys.
Right there, that one right there. Just walk us through. The nice thing about your, this is kind of the lay of the land. I mean,
You ain't any bigger, Jeff?
I don't think I
Yeah.
can zoom in here, I'll try.
I do have the drawings too, but I want to make
Where
sure.
you want to focus, I guess I can.
We start,
That's perfect.
start where we're sitting.
Where you're sitting, so that's gonna
All right.
be right up in here.
So, culinary cosmetology, well, we can start up here by the theory of the business. We have the business and retail cluster, which, I guess that's further down. Start with business management and info tab, which is basically up in this area. We have the computer programming, art and design, theory, graphic communications, which is in the space.
Top right side.
Correct.
This space.
This space right now.
Okay, say that again.
That's graphics, art and design, computer networking, and computer programming.
A new hallway right down the middle of this.
Correct. Right there, right where that wall is basically, is the new hallway.
And based on what you just said, if we don't have to have those, if we can put the doors in, we could actually gain some square footage of space in the theory rooms if you don't have to have an in-depth there, potentially.
And it's about 10 square feet, because you figure it's a 4x3 area, 3x3 area. The only thing for that theory room, I'm okay with that door opening in, because it's not gonna interfere with the corridor. I'm thinking that might be kind of helpful on a lot of these to us, actually. They changed that.
Well, you got the hallway going to a blank wall, I'm sure, is that an exit?
That's an exit on the end.
Emergency exit.
And then next to that is actually the space from the Regional Skill Center, theory room, the office that we're bringing over.
That's in that new area?
Correct.
Okay.
And then this is the office area, right up in the front. We have our new controlled entrance. This is actually the administrative offices in this area. If you move down just a little bit, Jeff, you'll see that we have the business and retail with culinary in this area, early childhood, health, and a cosmetology with its own entrance.
What about early childhood having its own, because don't they have a preschool during certain months, run a separate entrance for that, or they can share that?
They're gonna share that. That's what we're trying to utilize that for both programs. The other thing too is then we'll have a playground right here for early childhood. And if we move down just a little bit, Jeff. We have the parking lot that's right in this area in order to feed that area.
That was the area, you see the parking was getting expanded.
Correct.
Well, moved.
Moved,
Yeah, because we're gonna build
Relocated.
where.
Yeah.
Would you what security do you have in that area?
What was it, Jim?
The in and out that you are pointing to that Jeff just. Yeah, what kind of security do you have?
Double door, right?
Yes, it would be a typical lockdown vestibule, but they're not going to be able to get into the rest of the building from there. The only thing they're gonna be able to get into is early childhood. Yes, that's exactly right. We're just showing right there. It would be locked. So we wouldn't let them get any further down that hallway.
That intercom and camera to the main office will be there.
Yes. Now, mind you, we have that in the office of cosmetology and early childhood too.
Yeah.
So that if somebody's not in the office, they can see who's coming in. Now, mind you, a lot of that's gonna be by appointment and at certain times too, they have to be.
Sure.
I looked at that, but you had the parking lot on that side. I would think you want the parking lot on this side, wouldn't you?
We could, we at least were showing it now where it was before. And when
Okay.
Sanford did it, he was basically just relocating the one that was there. But I think you're right, it might be better right there.
Right, like to walk straight up, yeah, the park right there and walk, yeah.
And it'll be seen, and it's at the front of the school.
Right, I can see like the playground on your drawing and just move the parking lot towards this way versus that way. Because on your other drawing, have it right in front of the playground.
Chris, one little thing on the vestibule for that entrance where you have an outside door and an inside door.
Yes.
One thing that we did that I'm really happy about, especially you got little kids coming there, make it so the outside door is not secure. So people can come in the vestibule and then lock the inside one with the camera. Your camera's inside, your intercom system's inside.
and then they can get buzzed in from there, so that they're out of the weather, especially if somebody's not at the desk and they have to wait a little.
I agree. In our weather, it could be pouring down rain or it could be a snowstorm. We want to at least get them into the vestibule.
Chris, the way you have it drawn right now, that parking lot is on the left, let's say that.
Right in here.
Oh, and able to be entered from the front of the building. Okay, I see that.
That's what, if you go back to the one that's with the watershed, it shows it.
Yeah, if we put it over in this area, I think we'd be better off.
Yeah, right there.
Well, yeah, see, I think what Sanford did is he just took this and then repeated it over here.
That's what the drawing shows.
But I'm thinking we could put it right there.
The watershed one, up there.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah,
Chris,
so you
there was-
just showed it pushed over.
There was some discussion about having a door that can provide access to the culinary or the cafeteria in case there were some dinners. Can you
Correct.
speak to that?
Well, that's the beauty of that location.
Yeah, the parking lot, could go,
Yeah.
you could go left or right.
Where that culinary edition is right in here. And we have cosmetology and we have health and childhood daycare. All three of those are in a spot where we can control that entrance, have one parking lot on that side of the building.
That's interesting.
Sorry, guys, it just froze.
Well, Sam, to answer the rest of your questions, basically, the stuff that we showed up front, those programs are the ones that are changing. Everything in the back, the automotive, the construction, those are all basically staying in their same locations that they are now, because they're too big of programs.
Heavy equipment, it's gonna be difficult to change.
And relocate.
The machine shop's the only one we're pushing out.
That's right.
Machine shop, we're gonna.
Yeah, we're expanding that, but everything else is basically staying the same and in the same location. We did create a new program for facility management in the back, which I believe at one time that was shipping and receiving when it was first built. Then we have our extra classrooms here in the center with the LGI, that we can use those for the future. The new Eagle's Nest in this area. You can see most of these spaces back in here all remain the same.
That's the existing corridor now.
That's correct.
So entrance into, okay, I see.
So how are we making those theory rooms bigger then? Because they all have to get bigger, don't they?
Yes, essentially what you see like in this room right here, there's a wall here, so this is being expanded. The theory room, there's another one. This theory room, that one's new.
We're basically being pushed into a lab space just a little further.
Whatever we could take, if it was a storage room or anything else, when we go back to that demo plan, that's why you see so much demo there, was in order to expand those rooms. It should, what they need to be like 100 to 200 square feet bigger. So I think most of them were like 440 square feet. We need to be 660. Which is still small. I mean, it's still a small classroom. But that meets PE's requirements of what we need to do. Now, if you can see, like, here's the theory room now, right here. We're expanding it to take over the space where that entrance once was and that office. So we're pushing it out in every direction.
What about your security around, especially the big overhead doors and all that?
Gates, fencing, we're gonna be putting around all those for that Act 44. We wanna make sure that those doors, which are open all the time, are secure. They're gonna have some type of screen, blockable screen on them, so the kids are safe.
You're saying you're proposing fencing all as entrance, so that goes to a gate where they get to the.
We put it around all these areas where those open doors are, so that nobody else can get into that area.
That's a good idea.
Because right now, it's just wide open, which is scary in this day and age.
Running car motors and stuff like that, pulling cars now.
Well, it needs to be able to be open, that's the right. Yeah, fenced in areas would be nice addition.
Any other questions?
My question is for these guys who are here all the time. Del, are you happy with the design?
Yes, we've been through several different designs, and if we're gonna keep the bones of this building, this is probably one of the better designs that I've seen. The only way that you're going to, improve the overall function of the school would be to start with a new building. Using this existing spaces, this gives us flexible space, it gives us security and all kinds of things. There's a ton of different considerations that have gone into it.
Ladies? Like it?
Sure. No, we have a great building, and I've been here for a long time, but, just to expand the spaces, especially the rooms and classrooms, it's what the students, really need, the expanded block bricks, things like that, that's really what we need to focus on.
Jeff?
And for me, it's more of a power issue. I'll focus on my area. It's a great building. We've made it work. But we run into power issues frequently because it was never really designed for the stuff that we're throwing at it today.
Lack of.
We've got a lot of computers out there.
Yeah.
A lot of projection in every classroom, and getting power where we need it tends to cost money because it's not there.
And newer equipment designed for the individual industries. They have different technological requirements and stuff, and as far as power requirements and stuff like that. I mean, they're adding equipment to labs because it's newer technology, we need to teach it to keep up. And then we're running out of power in the rooms, not being able to, to accommodate everything that we would like to accommodate.
Is Joe's on?
He's in the meeting, yep, remotely.
How's he feel about the administrative flow and everything else that did it? To me, it looks really good, but.
Joe and I
I'm
sat
not
down
okay.
and did
most. How do you guys feel about the administrative rework and security of the front and side?
Well, where we started was when I arrived 2 years ago, there were 3 designs already out there.
Yeah.
And there were then 3 more designs that were prepared. And Joe and I sat down and laid the building out the way that we wanted to, which was what you're seeing here.
Okay.
And then we drew in everybody else with the comments and questions, and the staff and the faculty and so forth, following a proper protocol for community input. So this is exactly what we asked.
Staff all likes it? Staff all likes the
Well,
layout?
I mean, we've sought input from everybody. This design has something for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there would be comments that I wish this and I wish that, but overall, we've done everything, including having the architect visit with and sit with the faculty and the staff to talk through this issue, the design. And it is my understanding that this is the design that reflects our input.
But I only have one comment for the electrical lab. Are we incorporating all together now for the electrical? We call it electrical engineering. That is one of our heavy class participants. Are we expanding? I'm trying to figure out, because you can't read these things. Are we expanding that floor plan?
Well, we're expanding it from the standpoint that we just took that barn outside, cleaned it out, and we're going to use that as an additional electrical engineering lab space. And so we've got that place cleared, cleaned. We've got power going to it now. We've got a sidewalk going to it now. And this is all happening this last spring and this summer. And so, so they're netting more space. But when you talk about expanding it, we have to be careful because we only have one teacher in there, and that teacher's maxed.
I know that, but I'm more elbow we'll talk about.
Yeah, we are.
Because not more people, more elbow. If you go in that, if everyone in the class, it's only got about, everybody's there, they only got like 10 square feet to work.
What is the square footage of that second floor barn?
Well, that's bigger out.
That's probably 40 by 60.
So we're going to net out. They're getting essentially a whole new lab.
Yeah,
right now.
I know. Thank you. I was trying to wonder how we address that, because that is a high participation.
Yeah, and we're putting power in there and communications out there. And
That's great. Thank you.
How's that going to be secured? Is that part of the fence, within part of the fencing system, or is that?
That is not going to be part of the fencing system. That's a standalone structure. I don't know the origin of why or when it was built, but what we've done is put effort and resources into modernizing and renovating that building on the inside. So it will be an instructional space.
It's mostly for like actually doing real electrical work, not theory, so they'll know, like I said, they'll just go out there to do their running wires, like if you were out going into somebody's house.
Yeah, I'm just thinking more their safety getting between the building and that building. And,
Yeah, some of the things that we've added was exterior alarm strobes on the outside of this building so that they can be heard out there, data run out there, power run out there, so that they can have communication out there with the school building. And then also, data communication, computer or phone, those kind of things are out there as part of that, as well as being able to hear what's going on in this building out there, because it's not far enough away that they can't hear the outside strobes and things like that too. And then with the new fire alarm system, we can actually announce over the fire alarm system on the exterior speakers and stuff like that. We want to lock down or something like that. They'd be able to hear it move in or shelter in place or whatever. So.
and is that heated and cooled as well?
No, it's not. It's just like some of the other labs that, they're heated only, but that would be the thing that they would have.
This isn't space they're going to all the time.
No, this is just
project.
This is just a project house, basically.
So they could actually real life.
They're still going to have lab space and theory space in this building, and they would only go out there for,
chasing wires. Yeah, basically like real life stuff, like you were going to work on your house and if there's no heat or electric in it, they're going to put the same thing. That's what I'm an advisor on that. And that's one of the people who advise want. We want these children to know what it's like to work out in cold. That's what they actually ask for this. They want real life situation. When your power goes out, you want the guy to say, well, it's not 60 degrees and it's not sunny. I can't go over to your house. You want them over there in the rain, pouring rain, crawling around on the ground. Like, that's what the advisor group actually asked for. That they want to show safety how to do it in a pouring rain, get their electric back on your house.
Regarding security, we also have cameras out there. We can put cameras looking both ways.
That's the reason that I said that, because I'm on that steering committee, and that's what the people specifically asked instruct these people that they want police electric, they want to be able to know safety, how you work with electric. It might be raining, cold, be able to strip a wire when it's cold, but get your house back on, back heated. And that's what I want to make sure you understand, that it wasn't just the administration, it was actually the steering committee that asked for that.
Did Joe have a comment there?
I made adjustments so Joe can contribute. Joe, if you want to unmute again and try, I think we can hear you.
No, right now, it's been explained pretty well to everybody what we're trying to do out there in the barn. I think it's going to be a neat project for Corey Long and his students this year. And we did talk about maybe getting some heat out there, but that's going to be after the fact if we have to do that. But again, right now, that barn will be a nice addition to the electrical engineering program.
Overall, did you have any comments about the overall design? Pretty happy with it?
No, the design is exactly what Fred and I asked Chris. I think it's already about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago now. So what you saw was the, our dream wishes, I guess, Fred and I, when we collaborated together to see how we could improve this school setting, and trying to, bring the transition center over here will be a big plus to make them part of the school, and also to create a safety atmosphere for that type of population as well.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions. In order to make changes down the road, are there going to be any provisions, like getting in certain areas and all that? You have like wireless, because we need to run, for example, for any tunnels, we have like wireways around that you can easily do this kind of thing without tearing ceilings up for walls. Is that going to be considered somehow?
Yes, it is. We're gonna work with Dell as well as the instructors to go through the process and come up with a more flexible system. Yeah. That allows you to handle within space and distribute it that's cost effective in the future, rather than having to do a major renovation.
Well, it's always an issue.
Right.
And we're doing, let's do it.
You want to be able to
Considering
expand
down the road.
easily.
I say electric, there's whatever else is appropriate. Also, how much of the space will be actually utilized? Will there be people in each classroom when this is done?
Oh, yeah.
And it's fully functional, all the spaces will have occupants, classes. There's no spare capacity at this point, correct?
No, and we've already been outlining for you directions for the school to go as we have the new program. So, yeah, we are set.
What new program?
Well, there is some space built in here for more than the programs we're offering now.
So there'll be spaces not utilized.
Well, configurations of space, for example, the new LGI, there's not an LGI room in here right now. And so that's a new space. We are also adding, remember from the original conversations of 15 years ago, there was provision to add one new lab and one new theory room. That's still in here. We looked at how we can open.
That's just an open,
right,
down the road, new option.
Right, and we have utilized reconfiguration of some of the spaces that are not in use now to try to bring them online for new programming. And should this renovation not go forward, we're still looking at every nook and cranny of the building and we can bring in new programming. For example, that area that the shipping dock is being repurposed as part of this. So we're trying to gain instructional space wherever we can.
And this is based on 750 students?
Correct.
What's the highest enrollment that's ever been in the last 10 years?
I've been here for 15. First day of school might have been mid 800s. But by the end of the first or second month, 815, 820.
That's the highest.
And that's a while ago.
Yeah, we've never, in my tenure here as a principal.
I guess I don't understand the answer yet, is there will be spaces not occupied, classroom spaces after this renovation that we're gonna try and get new programs into, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. A couple other things is the estimate. I know you had an estimate up there. When are we gonna find out, or maybe to the point where we can fine tune that estimate? I know these are just estimates and all that, but.
That's the next step. Our estimate, we feel pretty confident right now. George is the next one.
Okay.
So our general construction, we've got the roof, the walls, the doors, the windows, those things, all the general construction things. I have a per square foot cost, but I feel comfortable with what we have here. The next step after tonight was George's proposal of the HVAC system, so he can start to put hard numbers to that as well. So that'll be the next detailed thing is we're gonna see from George. He's gonna start looking at the lights. And you mentioned earlier how many lights you might be able to delete if it's better off going LED or whatever it might be. And then working with daylighting and working with us with the insulation we're putting in the roof. So the more detailed estimate for the MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing is coming next from George.
And you have basically that number 4 option in this renovation addition, kind of?
That option 4 is the one that best fit into our scenario.
Into the 20 and 5.5.
Correct.
But that was a recommendation, and are you looking to us to provide you with some answer or authorization to keep proceeding with option 4?
We are.
Yes, sir. I think we've covered it with Dell and our collaboration there. We want to make sure everybody's comfortable.
So that needs to be like an official motion or just a?
No, I think if you just tell us to proceed, we're good. It doesn't need to be an official motion because some of these, they're going to evolve and change over the next 6 months too. I mean, something might come up and maybe we can't get equipment or something like that. We might have to come back. So if you just tell us you're comfortable with that option 4, most importantly, Dell's comfortable with that option 4, we're going to proceed with it.
Is there anybody that has this objection to option 4 at this point from what you know? I guess that would be the.
I don't have any objection to any of the options. I just want to make sure that people understand that we're now taking 3 other options off the table. And so he's only going to come up with one number about what he believes it's going to cost for that one, knowing that there are other options that may be more or less. I don't think there'll be more.
Rooftop units, the reason you're looking at that and the reason they're option 1, option 2 are because they're a cheaper way to go. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, they typically are a more economical way to go, depending on what you have to do with the structure and the building.
Right.
Cheaper in terms of initial installation, but not necessarily cheaper for the life cycle of the system.
That's correct.
I think that's important that we know that, really, the life cycle cost of this thing.
That's why I'm addressing it, making sure we don't miss that.
I think it needs to be figured in the equation.
So we might spend a little bit more with option 4 up front here, but it's going to pay off over time.
Correct.
George, would you be receptive to taking 2 of those systems and comparing them?
Sure, that's not.
Or take option 4, take one of the other ones that makes sense?
Whatever, Bill. What would have been the other economical comparison?
I think option 3.
Was it 3 and 4?
3 and 4 were comparable, and 1 and 2 were.
So maybe 4 and 2, or.
So you have a difference.
Sure, we can look at the rooftop versus the interior.
That could be an alternate.
You know,
well, hold on, because you had mentioned that rooftops were really not workable because of the weather in this region. So I think what we're hearing is 1 and 2 are pairs that were comparable, and 3 and 4. Doesn't seem to make sense to me to now just force a comparison in with a system that's not feasible for our area.
There's a whole lot of rooftop units around and a whole lot of people work on. There's an optimal. I don't like going up there at all, even when it's nice out. But sometimes you got to do that. So it's possible. Is that going to be $1 million less? I doubt. I think
that's what we want to see, though.
Right. The big question is going to have to be, though, is what kind of structural change is it going to take to put those up there? If that's doable in this scenario to figure that out, we've got to have real costs. We can't have this is cheaper, but then we spend just as much money that we save putting in new beams and everything else.
Right.
So if it's doable to do a comparison, that would be nice to see. But
one thing I won't make George do, and I can't have him design 2 systems. We can have him look at these systems and run them now, but when we go to bid, I can't have him bid a rooftop unit system and an air handler unit system. That's just gonna be too difficult to do, because then we're designing 2 separate systems.
But you can put within 10% numbers to both of those systems.
He could, right.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. We have some good numbers from past projects that we've done and ones that we have currently going on. For the rooftop unit options, we also have them for the air handling unit options. So they're very similar systems, just one's on a roof, one's in the building. Yeah, we can put together those numbers and you can take a look at it. From an operating cost, just from an energy standpoint, probably going to be comparable. The interior units are going to be a little bit better, but the overall life cycle and maintenance cost of the rooftop units is going to be more than the interior system. But I can put all that information together for you. You can take a look at it.
So I have a couple questions from the people that are participating remotely. First question, will the HVAC system include any type of antibacterial and or antiviral filtration?
We are currently following the ASHRAE guidelines, which are changing on a daily basis due to the COVID. There have been some things come out recommending different filtration. There have been some things come out possibly recommending additional air changes in the classrooms, but we don't have a final resolution as to what the recommendations are going to be. We can certainly look at increased filtration. What I know about the current virus is I've been told that even putting HEPA filtration, which is what hospitals use, doesn't completely filter out the virus. We have clients that are looking at UV to try to help with the situation, but as of right now, we don't have any final clarification as to what the recommendations will be. We'll keep looking at that and bringing that back to the crew as we go through the process. I think that's something important to look at.
A lot of that's gonna be an add-on equipment also, so we can continue doing.
Who's that question from, Chad? You would ask me that.
I have a question.
Bill Fenton.
On that subject, these self-contained units, so that's what we put on our, I will drive school, that's what we put into their revamp renovations, our RAM, and they have individual room handlers. So every one, they were saying, well, every one you have to change the filters, every classroom has to change the filters, so this would be similar to that, is that what I'm saying? So every classroom, we have to change our own filters on, is that what these individual ones would be?
No.
They wouldn't be like, so that the air handler that's feeding these rooms doesn't have an individual filter?
It doesn't, it has filters back at the unit. So you say you would have one unit that serves 8 classrooms.
Okay.
All of the filtration is back at the unit itself.
Okay, well, let's say they open, okay, and so you have filters to change on that particular air handler. And then, so, and would they be accommodating a UV, like I said, ultraviolet light purifier on these, or would that, you wouldn't know if there would be room, because they're very big, the space there, because that's what they were talking about, bacteria killer, and that's what they claim works good. Like, you know, I'm just saying, it's not.
Yeah,
disclaiming myself, that's all I heard on it, I've heard, and that's the newest, greatest thing.
Right, and that's what we've been being told, but we haven't been given any final direction as to what the recommendations are. The UV bacteria killer is a very expensive option.
Oh, yeah.
It can be added to any air handling unit. Now, putting it into a packaged rooftop unit now throws you into a different cost class for that unit. Now you're talking custom rooftop units versus the package. So that will definitely have an impact on cost if that's what the recommendations end up being.
If they come through and tell us this is a requirement from the government that they have to have some kind of filtration, that we could, on your design, we probably would like to have that so it could be added on. You know, they're taking us, like you said, every day they're changing rules and the HEPA filters and the UV. So we could take care of that section of you could add it on to those air handlers. That's I'm more worried about they're giving stipulations. If you try to design this thing, they change the rules on you in the middle of the state. And I'm thinking they're gonna say, oh yeah, if you put that kind of stuff in, we can give you a little money.
Right. Yeah, the air handling unit design within the building would be much more accommodating, much less expensive to try to deal with than a unit on the roof.
That's why I was hoping you could say. Because like I said, UV lights you have to change. Technically, you're supposed to change them every year, and they're pretty expensive too.
Very, and they're not I mean, they're a little bit dangerous if you don't know what you're doing with them, just from a maintenance standpoint.
So another question is, does the chilled water piping currently exist to classroom unit ventilators and air handling units? And is that chilled water piping adequate, or does it need replaced?
Needs replaced. Both the hot and the chilled water piping. There's chilled water piping to some areas, not all. Correct, Al?
That's correct.
And being the age of the piping, it's definitely due for replacement.
All new pipes for everything.
Essentially, it's all gotta be replaced. A lot of the piping that's underneath the floors can be added for the plumbing. 'Cause it's short. So we're redoing all the bathrooms, so those are all being gutted, so all that plumbing's being replaced.
No more 2-foot doors?
I know, like.
So another comment that was made is the capacity at 750 was the inclusion of the transition center coming from the other building to this building included in that head count consideration.
Yes.
And technically speaking, with our student teacher ratios, it would be 912 is the teacher to student capacity by contract ratio versus actual attendance or membership. And then if you added the transition center, that would make it 950. So that was just a comment on that space consideration. Another point.
Hold on, Jeff, just one thing on that though. Your theory rooms are based upon 24 students.
Correct.
That's what your square footage is. So in essence, the 750 is a generic number.
And the 950,
what you're looking at.
It is.
Two, right? The 950 is 50% at one time, 50% at another time.
Yeah.
There should be window coverings on the interior classroom windows due to the Act 44 requirements. So while being able to peer from the corridor into the classroom is a good thing from a technical education perspective, from an Act 44 perspective, it increases what the teacher has to do in order to secure the room. So they just wanted to make sure that consideration was being given to that. And then another question about the security cameras at the secure vestibules for the programs like childcare. They're asking if there are security cameras in the vestibules. I think you answered that earlier.
Yeah, we'll have cameras in the corridors, cameras outside the building.
If we are gonna put windows down the corridors, we're gonna need to make sure that there's either bullet resistant glass or that shatter resistant film put on those.
More than likely we'll go with the film because the glass is so expensive.
As long as it works, I don't think there's an objection. I just think that we're gonna need to make sure that's a part of the specifications.
Certainly.
Pretty soon, we're gonna be putting monitors in the hallways with no windows and cameras in there to then pipe out the picture that can be shut off in case of emergency.
Red.
Mr. Emmer, can you help me out on this? We installed that Raptor system, and I'm pretty sure all Gene does is swipe my license. Correct. And that, I mean, is one of those available to enter in that entrance down there? We have our Raptor system set for only
faculty.
Megan's Law. But we know exactly who's in the building at all times.
Yes, and that's the way the Raptors work in the other school districts. I know, like with us, they've all got, I know Mill Creek, they already have our driver's licenses, so when we walk up, we say who we are, boom, we're already in the system.
But in order to get into that entrance that's down by early childhood and culinary, and if you swipe, that has to go through something to clear you.
We don't currently have Raptor installed.
So that second door to open
right
in that area, you know, it's been pretty beneficial actually for especially our elementary schools.
We have not installed Raptor at this time, but that was going to be one of the last pieces that were installed. And we've now, in the 2 years that I've been here, done just about every single other thing. And so as part of this, that would be a minor issue. And Jeff, there's an annual fee, but it's not tremendously expensive.
It's not crazy.
So that would be one of the final pieces in this system. And we've come a tremendously long way in 2 years.
He raises an interesting point though, that would be its own vestibule versus the front of the building being its own vestibule. I don't know how the Raptor system works in terms of being able to have multiple scan points with a single database. I can look into that.
That would be a technology solution issue. I think the bigger issue is, are we going to have some sort of a system checking that's providing an online inventory of who's in the building? And that, I think, is an easy enough fix. There's multiple vendors that would be able to do that.
Jeff, currently our administrative assistant, you hand this to them, they swipe in the office, but there's got to be a pad that.
So Union City, I have familiar with that district as my wife works there. You scan your ID in the secure vestibule. It brings your ID up on the screen inside the secured clerical space. They know who you are before they let you into the building. So I know that it can be done like that. But speaking specifically down to childcare, as well as cosmetology, that will be interesting to have that amount of manpower watching that door for those clientele. So
that's why I'm thinking
about it.
That's why I'm thinking some other type of system that does that check for you. So you don't, somebody doesn't have to be watching monitor the whole time.
So you're scanning your ID, but that's not letting you in the building. Somebody still, a human has to let you in the building.
Right.
Because there's people that haven't been convicted that I still don't want in the building.
Let me just offer this detail.
Honestly.
True.
Okay. So just check.
But there'll be an open entrance.
It's not really open entrance.
No, not really, but I could just say, hey,
But it's really by the system you're talking about, it's twofold. That's addressing, looking out there, and then it's also keeping track of who's coming in. But a human still has to let you in. That was my question. It sounds like yes.
Yes.
So just, we have 2 vestibules now, 2 buildings. And thank you for allowing us the flexibility to implement a system that works well. We have the ability to monitor 2 vestibules now from a single point. Adding an ID card scanner to that, to presentation wherever these people may be, won't be that difficult. So the high school office will be able to continue monitoring any one of these entrances. Adding the ID badge in the next step versus something better than the camera, as Fred mentioned, a piece of technology will be able to put that in.
I think the childhood and the cosmetology, they are all known people that's come in, and it's not like it's on welcome guests, and if they don't say it's Mom, instead of Joe, if you show up, you probably wouldn't get in. But if they've been there, and it's usually students' parents coming, or somebody that they are having childcare. I know that's what usually the cosmetology is it's mostly parents of the students coming there. Unless you regularly come here and the teacher knows you to get your haircut there.
Sure. So
if they stay anybody strange, they won't let them in.
Who won't let them in?
Look, that's actually like a reception desk. That's what it is. It's actually a reception desk at the cosmetology area.
It's basically like, it's an enterprise, and it's basically like going to any salon. You make an appointment, they meet you at the door, they let you in, you have your appointment, and you leave. It's not a walk-in open to the public type.
Okay.
It's only by appointment only, and it's the same thing with daycare. They sign up at the beginning of the season, those students have already been enrolled, they're part of the program, they're expected at a certain time. The parents bring them to the door, the students meet them and bring them in, so there's not an open, like, public, it's not the mall, if that helps.
It's very human engaged now. It'll
It's
just be
basically
safer because they'll be behind 2 doors.
So the child gets dropped off by parent A,
Front doors.
and we know who's picking up at the end of the day.
It's basically like going to daycare.
Like they're following up families and then child education. And that's part of the training.
It varies. You'll be much more secure than it is now. You have to go to the front door, walk around. This is so we don't have the general, this is actually technically general public knocking at this door.
I guess that was more my concern.
Right, it is the general public. That's why I want
I don't think currently the parents often enter the building. They get left at the front door.
Right.
The child goes to the
Our
child.
students. The students actually, our students actually meet the children at the front door.
Gotcha.
And do the handoff right then and there. And you're right, the parents don't generally come in.
Right, but that's basically, it's just so it isn't, so we don't have regular people and technically customers. Correspond, all the customers, we come in over here, all the general public be coming this entrance.
So there's a period of time then in the new secured vestibule, that door will always be open. When those kids are out, what time do those kids get dropped off?
It won't be open, it'll be, like I said, it'll be.
Yeah, it won't be open. There'll be somebody there to open the door to let them in if they're permitted to come in. It'll probably be behind two sets of doors.
So our students are meeting them at the first door or second door?
I'm not familiar exactly with this vestibule, but they most likely would be, what I heard earlier, the vestibule would be open so that they're not out in the elements.
Only the first door.
Only the first door.
Will be open.
And students would be beyond that second door.
They'd be in the hallway there,
Behind the locked door.
behind the locked door, and then once,
With a camera on. And so they will not be exposed to the general public coming into the building. And to comply with Act 44 in general, we're trying to extricate the general public from the main part of the building. That's why the conversations are coming up about fingerprinting. And that's why they're coming up as far as daycare and cosmetology. We're trying to provide them a way to get into a sectioned off piece of the building so that their customers and clients don't have access to the main populations. And this design takes care of all of that. And right now, when people come to the building for haircuts or for child drop off, we have somebody that physically meet them at the door. They have appointments, we know they're coming, and it's a physical trade-off, handoff of the guest. This will just prevent that person from even getting into the main corridors of the building.
So are you guys clear on the engineering part? You're going to come up with a proposal on both.
That's correct. Yes.
And then that'll go back. So you know what you're doing. What's our next step then in this process?
Essentially, our next step is to work with George to develop the MVP systems. That's one of the things you'll see lacking from that set. We have the majority of classrooms laid out. Now that we have all that, we hand that off to George. So the next step is really a lot of George's refinement, George's estimates. Then we'll put them both back together. So we're going to come back to you next time, hopefully in September, for that design development, head towards the construction documents with some of George's numbers, some of George's plans. You might have some drawings at that point. Start having a spec for Dell to go through, which we have a general spec already that Dell's going through. Like I said, Jim and I, our portion of it, we're a little bit further ahead than George because we need to be so we can get those spaces set up for him to work in. So George is really the next step.
Now, we will have the comparisons much earlier.
We'll send
Within
those
the next-
out.
Yeah, within the next week or less, we'll have those out for everybody to take a look at.
Now, just so that everybody knows, what our protocol will be for that is to communicate those. I'll send them to Sam. Sam will then have the option, if you want, to send it to the JOC. I will send it to the renovation committee automatically. And so I have to back brief that group because they may not be attending this thing. So they'll not know what we're talking about yet or why.
So does everybody want to keep abreast of all that, the emails coming, or send it out to everybody? If you don't want to see it, just ignore it.
I think you've been doing a good job with that.
Yeah, I think we need to.
So
That's a
then,
big chunk of money.
yeah,
So I'll send it directly to the JOC as a whole. And we're just changing a little bit of over time as we get to know each other and work with each other. My initial instructions are to communicate with the JOC chair, and now to send stuff out directly to everybody on the JOC is not a problem for me at all.
Well, like you said, it's anything sensitive you don't want to send over. And because we haven't got our security emails yet, so.
yeah, but none of this is, none of this.
Right. Because it's not, yeah, you're not.
I would think some of these files are probably pretty big, so it's probably another reason to have that email and storage place set up. And you don't have to email, you can just put it on share. And
That would be,
Send an email and say it's.
that way, if it changes too, you can put updates out there.
Jeff, I'm gonna need to get with you to set up that portal.
I'm on it.
We haven't got that. We work, like I said, we've been working on different stuff like that.
We've been talking about it.
Okay.
We're ready to go there. We're just,
We haven't got quick.
getting the whole school year set up.
Did the Dropbox work okay last time?
I didn't say.
The Dropbox for the preliminary stuff, did that work okay last time?
Not exactly, because we were trying to send files and files were too big, and then we were having issues where we were having requests to print the things because, they were, so, not exactly.
Okay, well, I can tell you, we did compress these files that you have on that thumb drive, Jeff. And the one was 8 meg, and the other one, I think the PowerPoint was only 2 meg.
Yeah,
The drawings are larger, but
they didn't look bad.
what size
Either
are
some kind of
drawings?
share.
10 and 20, but the PowerPoint is 6.
Either some kind of share or Dropbox. You're not gonna mail a 10 meg file.
Right.
Half the people's systems will reject it.
Jim Buxby's dial-up modem will die.
Like 40.
I don't think he heard you, Jeff.
Before we have these nice letters manufactured, is anyone open to a name change?
I'm still fighting people stop calling it the Voc Center, the
Yeah.
Voc Ed. It's not, it's in law, it's changed. It's supposed to be the Erie County Technical School. If you want to have a conversation about changing the name, I'm going to be, it's the first time hearing about it, I'll just be an observer.
Just, as a whole, where we're at in the economy, where we're at in the job, is it time to change what was the name, Joe? Is it time to change the stigma of the facility? Does a name change help that?
Well, it could if we have the oomph to go behind it with what you see once you get inside the building.
Well, it's $30 million, a lot of oomph.
No, that's mostly pipes and cosmetics. I'm talking about equipment and technology.
Sure.
There's $1.6 million in here, and that's for furniture. So now we're down to somewhere in the area of 1.1 for equipment, and that's 1.1 is not going to buy a manufacturing lab. So I'd be real careful about projecting an image of advanced technology center unless we have the background with it with technology.
I think it's an idea worth at least exploring. I think there is a whatever associated with the name's been out there forever. We're doing a $32 million upgrade. I mean, I would think we could even talk about it and see what might make sense.
Well, certainly there are some other options here. Technology Institute, Advanced Technology Centers, we could do that. There is a stigma with vocational education, and that's what's burned into everybody's mind. And I live my life in this area, so I'm not.
Something that you just said that concerns me. What's the number that does need to take it to an advanced technology center? What's the amount of money that's needed equipment wise? If we're going to spend 32 million and only 1.1 is dedicated to enhancing the programs, and that's not it. I mean, overall, this money will enhance the overall feeling of the place. But if we're only advancing the programs about 1.1 million out of 32, is there a number that, is it $2 more million? Is it $4 more million?
Actually, there is a number. It's based on national practice. Chris has quoted that number to us, and we've been told that's not going to happen. It's generally 20 to 25% of the cost of the renovation goes directly into equipment.
I know, but where we're at, to where you would like to go in the next 5 to 10 years, I mean, overall, what's that number? I mean, 25% is a general number.
Well, your question to me was, what would it take to get to an advanced technology center? We would be on par with that 25% of what this renovation is.
8 million.
Yeah. Now, what I would want to do and so forth, that would be a different question. But I've mentioned to this group many times, I'm very concerned about the legislators and the press coming through here after a $32 million renovation and seeing 60s technology embedded in most of the labs.
Correct.
And that's been something that has not really been something that we've had a good conversation about because of the cost.
I don't think you're correct on that statement.
Okay.
I know there's no 60 technology in this building. I've been here long enough, graduated from here, and it's completely changed decades. And since I graduated in '74, so, and
all of that.
I'm just saying, there's no any 60 technology in this building. It's because there's only one way to hammer a nail with a hammer. They use air guns too, but there's only one. If you have to put a nail with a hammer, there's only one technology to do that. We don't care what year it is.
Yes, is there any 70s or 80s technology still?
Yeah, technically, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I guess that's my only concern.
I'm agreeing with you, Dave. I think you should go to everybody, take it to your own school district, talk to the superintendent, because the superintendents are the ones that have the capability of changing the name. We don't. Superintendent has a lot more power to influence everybody in your board and everybody in my board. And that's where you want to start changing the name. Then we can come back to Dr. Walker.
It's really hard that's a great idea, but it's hard without having some brains behind that and putting something out there to say, oh, I like that. Right now, it's it's the name we have. I'm not opposed to any of that.
I'm just saying it's a new reopening.
Yeah.
It's the next phase of this facility being a big asset to our community. Our
Jeff, how
county.
long's the E been out to the logo? Because it would be a logo change, it would be everything.
I believe the logo happened in the early 90s when it changed from the Erie County Vocational Technical School to the Erie County Technical School.
You're 25, 30 years on just that. I mean, that was the last time. So I think it's time we can look at it, you know, however that happens.
I understand what he's saying, you know, that we're gonna spend 32 million, but I don't even think 8 million upgrades your machinery.
Not everything.
I mean, because, I'm looking at new machines that work right now, and we're on hold because we just said we can't afford it right now. I'm talking just a small machine, a CNC bridge mill or anything like that, you're gonna spend $250,000 on.
There's other
One
options
machine.
for an educational application. The manufacturing lab has got 60s technology. It's dated.
I guess that's my point, Fred. Should we be thinking about some of these monies being directed more towards program enhancement than facelift the building? Or is that just a moot point and it really just needs to be that much more in the next 5 to 10 years? We need to come up with another 8 million to really get modern.
I think we have to be really careful with our words. When you talk about a facelift for the building, this building, what it needs is really not the appearance. It's the guts of the infrastructure.
I get it. I'm comparing what is being done to what needs to be done to the kids.
Well,
The biggest challenge is getting 11 school districts to approve $32 million just for our facelift, let alone another 8 million, 10 million for new equipment.
I agree, this is a lot more than a facelift. I use the wrong term.
No, I'm just saying. Because as of right now, I'm not convinced that all 11 school districts are on board with a $32 million renovation.
So how about this? Because we're starting to spin in a very big way.
Yeah.
We're doing our best to keep it into the $32.5 million range, and I'm not sure that we're going to get all the $32.5 million. I've been doing this in technical school building for 30 years. And what I can tell you is that labs tied to technology are insatiable. We'll never reach the promised land. And so the question is not, can you get enough money to outfit the labs for a media tour? The question is, can you put in place a sustainable funding stream so you can continually modernize?
Gotcha.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
And no matter what, we talked in here even tonight about changes in technology and trying to get power to keep up and that kind of stuff. We're never going to reach the promised land. So I think the more important question is not necessarily what can we do to get more than 1.1 million right now. I think the question is, what are we going to do to put a funding stream in place? And that's not there.
I agree. I guess that's my point is, if we're going to invest this type of money into this building, what is the process and the product that's going to be produced out of it? Do we have enough oomph? We need to do something in the next 5 years that puts enough oomph behind this new beautiful building that more kids are going to want to come to produce something that, when they leave here, it's top notch.
And so the answer is yes, we need to do that. We probably need a strategic plan to help us guide down that path. I've not seen the evidence right now that the circumstances are amenable to have that conversation. And that's partly why I'm trying to introduce new programming here to draw new students with different desires, because I know that to start a new program, I'll have certain smaller amounts of cash available to start new labs that will draw new attention.
So Rick, you can take that back to the superintendents. I'm sure in between COVID conversations.
Yeah, just for something else to talk about.
Start talking about that. And this became apparent with the equipment a few months ago when we talked about this. I had a conversation with Fred, and we've had a big turnover here on the board. But before what's that place called next door?
Skills
911. No,
Oh, the
911 center. When we sold that property, okay, that money was put and given to or set aside to the foundation, really for the express purpose of developing a new lab and to be able to fund equipment for that lab, because you can develop labs all you want, if you have no equipment, what have you got? You know, we're talking, what is it, 220 or less than $250,000, right? You know, how far does that go? If you're really talking about something, and so when I shared that, you know, it's like, you know, yeah, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not.
We really have 146 acres here.
I'm sorry?
We have 146 acres. Is there any value to that?
Give or take.
Is there any value to that off of flour or off of? Yeah.
PennDOT's gonna tell us in a minute.
No, they're not gonna tell us what we could actually get for it.
It's gonna be 144 pretty soon or something.
Is there any value back there?
Oh.
Is there any value to the 44 developable acres that we have?
Yeah, there would be.
Is there $8 million? Probably not.
Yeah, I agree.
You're gonna argue, you're gonna argue with many superintendents, so, and they took a lot of energy to get this facility.
Yeah.
And they don't wanna give away their foothold, okay?
Sure.
I mean, I'm all for selling and changing names and stuff like that, but it isn't easy.
I get it. I guess I'm just thinking about the next phase.
Well, be
Because
careful.
this all makes very good sense to me. And if Dell's happy with it, and Jeff's happy with it, Sandy's happy with it, you're happy with it, and Terry's happy with it.
We're happy
You guys have been doing this long enough.
I would say one more thing. We're happy with it and we're appreciative of what we're gonna get. And like I said, no matter how much money's on the table, you can never satiate the needs in these technical labs. But one of the other things that I think that it's not premature now to talk about for this group is that with approval for them to start a community college in Erie, there's doggone little land available except this, and we've already been having them contacting us about it.
How much they want, 8 million?
Well,
How much free money are they gonna get?
that's basically what the skill center used to be. It was actually a community college. When it was open, they had, it was actually a community college.
I've tried to bring it.
But you know what?
Sam, are we getting off the purpose of this meeting?
We are still in study session, but yes. I guess let's go back down to, for our guest here, is there anything else that we need from them? We've given them the okay they're gonna get a comparison on the engineering, on some of the heating and air conditioning and ventilation and all that. And we're gonna continue to proceed as it's set forth. Does anybody have any questions or?
It's just, they're gonna keep us informed, and the next meeting is gonna be September-ish.
That's what we're shooting for design development.
And we'll forward all communications to the JOC and renovation.
They won't. We meet in August. Their next meeting where they'll present would be September at the earliest. They've got to get some work done. But probably by our August meeting, how soon will that comparison come?
Within the next week.
Okay, so fairly soon.
Yes, sir.
So will we have drawings in September?
Yes.
Concept.
You should, if that,
We'll have cost estimates. We'll be working through our design development drawings. So yes, we will have drawings to present.
Okay.
How accurate are those drawings then?
Yeah, I guess John, what kind of drawings are you looking for? Because we have drawings here now.
ours are,
Those are one type of drawings. There's no mechanical, electrical.
That's what you're looking for. That's what
They
you're
have to
asking.
be.
Okay.
what we have in there are the general construction drawings. So I've got site plans, floor plans, wall sections, details of classrooms. I needed to get all that prepared, ceiling height, stuff like that for George to take the next step so he can detail his system and then put his systems into that.
You're not gonna do enough time, right, Chris? So considering we all lost that month in schematic design, we're a month behind it right now.
Yes, the three of us have met. We're in really
Good
good
with the
shape.
schedule as it is.
And I gotta tell you, the timing for January or February is gonna be almost perfect because there's a lot of jobs that are finishing up right now. I have contractors calling me all the time waiting for the next one. I know Fairview has their project coming up here shortly. But then the next big one would be this, I think, they had, because all the stuff at Erie Insurance and Hamlet, St. Vincent's is starting to dwindle down. Correct.
So Chris, you're saying all your drawings that you have go out for construction official bids?
No, this is pre-construction. That's what we have for you tonight.
This is for engineering to take those drawings and then get their stuff in. Then after that, then you're.
Well, you answered my question. I just wanted to know, I thought you could take these drawings and say, here, I'm gonna need a
Not yet.
4,000 beams at this length and.
No, we don't have that level of detail. We've got generic details in there. We've got our work, but now we're handing it off to the engineers.
That would be December. You would have good final construction document plans by December.
Correct.
And
Now,
now,
honestly, I think I'm gonna have them before that.
Yeah.
Jim and I are in good shape. It's a matter of George catching up with us now because he was just put behind the 8 ball with that month. That's hurt him more than anything.
Any other questions for these guys then? Let's understand the time.
Thank you.
All
Well,
right.
Thank you for having us, everybody.
Thank you.
It's nice to see everybody. Yep, partially.
Chris, what happened to 40 minutes?
Us?
I would, this is the first time we got to meet from 2 months later.
Yeah, we can go into the board of health.
Hey, get your mask there. Let's, we're gonna head over to the boardroom for executive, so you guys can keep everything on here ready, but it'll be tighter there, so we'll have to have our masks.
Well, like I said, the skill center was actually, that's what it was built for, actually. A community college, you had college classes like that, machine class, welding, and nothing even related.
For anybody that wants a hard copy.
it's much more
I know what you're
invest here for their own benefit. Think about that. Think about it. You really become partners here. You're investing in this, that program then, because the whole
Terry, look at somebody assigned this.
and those LPNs, those RNs. I've got a license there already. She was a Vincent for 17 years and Hamlet she took a job in my office and wanted a heritage permit. Just the schedules. It's so unfamily, you know.
Okay, I was wondering.
Days, nights, 7 to 7 or 7 A to 7 P could be same week. No family and no, I don't know if you understand that on the field. No family, right between the telephone, right between the telephone.
You got a good eye.
Maybe you'll hire me someday.
I see that.
You might.
Wow, you can just see a little lump right there.
That, you're right, that RN is worse than hospital because it's not patient care anymore. There's so much clerical and so much charting that has to happen. It's not, the patient care is, you can't do your job with all the other stuff that you want. Most people go into nursing because they find nice care and love about people, not. Thank you.
It's cold in here, so I'm trying to get you to go home. My office is right out of town, of course, it's like regular. Thing
thinking to myself, I'm putting it out.
Well, and your stuff is half of it's disconnected in there because of the ceiling.
Yeah, but I tried it out today, it was beautiful, it was so cold for me.
Yeah.
I just
It
think.
might have been that, because yours went to night set.
Yeah, that's what it did, yeah, I know, sometimes when I'm working here at night, she told me I'll be there.
Yeah. I just,
Jeff, I appreciate that, and I'm looking at, I just want to make sure Chris wasn't, with the 750 capacity, I'm thinking, if that's his intention, that's great. I thought he was talking about that being our enrollment, I'm thinking, that our enrollment could be 912. So
Oh, I see.
I appreciate you, asking that question or bringing that up. No, heck, with that, we'll have plenty of room in this building.
Should.
Yeah, oh no, we will. You're talking 750 could be put in this area at one time.
And that's not including lab space, right? That's classroom space.
That's classroom space. Well, I wonder how long this is gonna take.
I don't know, I'm just gonna hang around for a little bit.
Well, yeah, there.
I think they're gonna be talking about that. I have several staff members that want to know if they're gonna be able to use their vacation from last year. Yeah, I have a hard time. I shut my mouth, but I'm just.
So in fairness, we're still
I have 2 weeks live. I knew I'd be on my time. Just have to work. I'll work through that if you want.
Yeah. It is what it is.
We ready to reconvene?
We've got this, accept agenda amendments. So I just say we got 2 additional. We'll just say that. Very good. We don't have to. We don't have to re-agenda because we haven't got started yet. Let's call this meeting to order. Just to announce, we did have an executive session just prior to this meeting, which you've been waiting for us to get out of for discussion of personnel. So let's start with a moment of reflection, please. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So much better live.
So they can see the flag, you know.
That's all right. So they have it at home. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Dinsmore?
Here.
Mr. Bucksky?
Here.
Mr. Olsanic?
Here.
Mrs. Brink sent her regards. Mr. Rickroad?
Here.
Mr. DePlacido?
Here.
Mr. Cancilla? Mr. Ring?
Here.
Mr. Gilbert?
Here.
And Mr. Donald is absent.
So we have 8. Is that correct?
I do not have Mr. Kinsella in Zoom. I have a Jacob Hagmeyer and Lisa in Zoom.
All righty, just as a point of order here with the, if we make motions tonight, just like we done on Zoom, if you could say your name, that'll help Terry out, and second, that way it's easier, especially with the muffled mask and all that. If you can do that, that will help us immensely. Thank you. So we have agenda and amendments. We've got operations section 5A. We've got section or A, B, and C. Can we take those to? Yeah, let's do A and B together. We've got a declaration of reopening and the motion to accept the resignation of Stephen O'Donnell, Wattsburg School District. Let's make that motion.
What's the declaration?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Rickroad.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. What is the declaration for reopening? I think that's for the state for the COVID. Say anything about COVID?
That would enable us to modify operations if needed to have a blended or an online operation if the health department requires a modification of our attendance policy.
So all districts are having to do.
These are the amendments that you're going to see later on in the agenda. So we merely just listed these, but the actual motions are farther into the agenda.
So does this need to be a motion?
I believe the motion should be to accept the agenda and those above amendments.
These are amendments. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. I got it. We have a motion second already. What do we do with that?
That's to approve the agenda with the amendment.
Agenda. Okay, and in addition to that, though, we have 2 more. We have two more agenda items to add. We're putting them at the end under where C is other. We'll do D. That'll be a contract extension, and also E will be Dr. Walker's 2021 salary. So you guys have made those motions, understand that? You're good with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
First and second. Any other discussion?
We discussed real quick, we need to discuss that, we can discuss it in the motion, sorry.
This is just to accept the adding to the
Motion to accept.
Got that. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Got meeting minutes.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes. Second.
John and Andy over there, right?
Right, yes.
We're going to try to get them trained. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Guest and public comment. Would you like to address the board?
We do not have anybody in the chat addressing the board. We have one additional participant in Zoom. I mentioned the name.
Is the Gerard business manager?
Watching you, Dennis. Behave yourself.
I thought Don was supposed to be on there, she said.
All right, operations. We've got new business. Is anybody want to make a motion? We could take A1 and 2 together. I make a motion. Okay. David. Motion's it. Is there a second?
Second, Gilbert.
All right, any discussion? This is the extension of 1 year for the Act 93 administrator's contract and also the business manager's contract. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. So now we've got, Tim, you said you want to put some of these together? Little delay there. Motion 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which includes those that we just discussed about where they were. Somebody want to make the motion for all of those?
I make a motion to approve 3 through 10.
There's second.
I'll second it. Rick Rowe.
Dinsmore, sorry.
Any discussion on any of those?
Yes, we have a replacement for O'Donnell. Comment.
If you push that link to Steve O'Donnell, Wattsford, we received a letter from Wattsford, I believe it was yesterday, about the resignation for Steve, and I believe in the letter, they mentioned that they're going to have somebody in, I think, the August session. It's number 10.
He's not resigning from their board, he's just resigning from the tech school board.
No.
He's resigning from his school board, so the other board has to resign from the JOC.
He's applying for a job, and when you're on the school board, you can't apply and be a member of the board, so he's got to resign from that. Because he resigned from that, he has to resign from here.
It's important to keep this new construction plan being communicated to all schools.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Old business, discussion regarding RCTC operations.
I was asked to provide data on the number and nature of the fingerprinting that's taking place in the ECTS and provide an update. The data is provided for you. Now, over time, this has changed, and so less than half of what happens in fingerprinting has to do with the education community. The other thing I would offer up is that while the perception might have been that we were the primary location for fingerprinting in the area, we're not. Their primary location is Agility Marketing at 2323 West 38th Street. And they also offer fingerprinting at the UPS store in Yorktown Plaza at 2501 West 12th Street. And the IU5 does fingerprinting as well.
More than we thought.
And this has come up with the organization Identigo in the past, what would happen if we weren't providing fingerprinting, and they said they would just move to find another location, that they would seek to find another location.
Did they give you any idea? What is our contract with? How much notice do we need to give them if we wanted to change them?
It's either 90 or 45 days.
Okay. So that was the discussion that we've had before. Here's the information. Now with our, if somebody wanted to make a motion now, they can make a motion based on this? Or do we need to?
Yeah, it's under RCTC, yeah, we could make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we terminate our contract. I second it.
Motion and second, that would be whenever we can legally do that. Any other discussion?
I just can't believe that we're just talking about, how many years have we been talking about? And it's been the only place forever, and all of a sudden, there's like 2 other places, and they don't care.
3 other places.
Well, it's always been down
Yeah, that's new, that's news to me tonight, John, because
We've been talking about it for
Right.
years, and all of a sudden,
they were at the UPS store on Peach and there by Liberty Plaza, but they've stopped doing that, and that was my understanding, that was the 3rd location.
But they just moved it to a different.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, so that's actually good for, the community has more options then. So any other discussion? All those in favor of this motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, it carries. You work on wrapping that up. Very good, thank you for that information. Financial items. Anything you need to go over, Terry?
Well, in capital projects fund, if you look at open invoice detail, it includes, we received an invoice from Mr. Kaufman's firm for the next $225,000 increment. If you recall, there should be 3 increments, and there's also a bit of a charge for some of that stormwater study that was done by, I can't recall the firm's name. So there will be invoices going out to the districts. We will probably drop those in the mail on Monday, and I will not be issuing the check until we get the district's money back in on it.
Gary, how much of a charge for stormwater?
That was probably the geo
Can you open?
testing.
I thought that was supposed to have been part.
Yeah, he was gonna cover that, remember?
He was gonna cover that. He said that we would still end up paying for it, but that he covered it initially as part of the transaction, so that the overall deal didn't blow apart.
So Terry, what's your feeling on that when we find the amount? You're gonna just add that, split it
It's,
by,
I believe, $9,900 on this initial one. We didn't get billed for the other part of the, I think it was engineering survey.
Because he has some of that under his contingency plan as well.
No, not free.
well, all of this is going to be encompassed into that number. This is like, you can almost say it's like an advance.
So if we're paying him $675,000.
That gets
That's gonna
deducted.
deduct off his 125.
Correct, correct.
Okay, I was gonna ask that question sooner or later.
The problem was in the past, where we've said, let's do this, let's get some drawings. He'll go so far, but he won't spend the.
Right, I
time.
understand that
So
part.
that's why, if we want all that, we gotta pay for it ahead. He gets paid that whether we move forward or not.
Right.
Is he 2/3 of the way done, do you think? Is that work, accepting payment 2 of 3?
Yes.
225?
Yes. We're now ready for payment 2 of 3.
There was a marker where he had to get before we would pay the second.
Is he there?
Yes.
All right.
What marker is that?
That he presented to the JOC, his work up to this point.
It's not 2/3 time.
Probably not, but it's along the process of where it gets done.
The same, I think, is not, probably. If we're 2/3 of it, I mean, all the engineering has to be done now. We're making progress, but I don't know that it's 2/3 progress.
How much towards 2/3?
I'd agree.
But we had a schedule that we all agreed to on how it's gonna get paid. We're on that schedule. Correct. That's where we're at.
Next time, get it scheduled differently if it's not a.
If he doesn't show up with the drawings in September, then we can say.
Chris isn't leaving town anytime soon.
He isn't gonna get his 3rd payment.
I think he's well aware of that.
Okay.
All right, so what do we have, motion here?
9,900, is that what we figured out? Yes. So the motion would be yes, for motion B there.
Motion to approve the financial items section of the agenda.
Only second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It would be the whole thing, Jim. All or nothing. Okay. Passes 7-1. Human and Quality Resources, we've got resignation and retirements. We've got 1 and 2, and we have then under B, under hiring, we have 1, 2, and 3. You okay putting all those together?
I make a motion to accept the resignation and retirement of Heather Beck and Donald Byrne, and the hiring of Michelle Darby, Lyle Taylor, and Catherine Bill.
Any discussion?
Question, do I need to abstain if I know that one of you
related to him? Are you related?
Not related.
Is it gonna benefit you in any way?
Just because you know the person? No, you don't have to abstain.
If you wanna get rid of them?
No, I don't want to get rid of
Oh, that means he's a good hire.
it. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, under other, we have a motion 1 and 2. You could pump those together. Somebody makes that motion?
I'll make the motion. Rick. Second, Dennis.
So a motion to approve the 2 full days of COVID-related training funded through the PCCD COVID grant, which we already have, correct?
I wrote that grant, it was approved.
And the second motion is for 1 full day of curriculum development for all instructors, curriculum development rate of $35 an hour, and that's funded through the 1920 assigned fund balance for COVID. Approximate cost of over $8,000. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so that takes us to D, which is from the floor for contract.
All right, I make a motion to approve a 1-year extension of the collective bargaining agreement between the Erie County Area Vocational Technical School Operating Committee and the Erie County Technical School Federation of Teachers. This will extend the current terms of the contract by 1 year until June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? He's got to update his name for us. You can talk to him about that. Okay, good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then E would be for Dr. Walker's increase salary for this coming year.
Make a motion to increase Dr. Walker's salary by 2.75% for 2021 school year.
Second, Dennis.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 8-0. JOC board remarks and comments. Anybody have anything else? Yes, sir.
I got a few things I'd like to discuss. One, we discussed via a Zoom meeting about if we were going to make sure our recent graduates got certified in their respective courses. I had a parent contact me tonight for automotive technologies. It still has not been given the opportunity to get his certification, and it's costing 2 jobs already.
What certification are you talking about?
That's whatever we discussed.
Probably inspection mechanic and.
Yeah.
It would be inspection and emissions, and I do know Sam Stever was in the building today to discuss.
I heard 6 kids got to do it and the rest of them haven't yet.
I can address this, Sam, if you need me to.
Which and I met with Sam Stever. We have put a prioritization on his work with providing those certifications opportunities for our students as his priority before he deals with any adult education opportunities through our CTC for the same. He's putting together a plan as we speak right now to get those kids through the remainder of those testing and certifications. We've addressed it. We've got a plan in place. We're putting those kids through it, and we will start that closer to coming into school starting.
So the kids that graduated last year, they're gonna have to wait until end of August, 1st of September?
No, that's not what I said. I said,
Yeah, you did.
we're working the plan now, and they will have an opportunity to put together those courses as soon as we can get them scheduled with SAN. And they will be done before any other adult education in the area continues.
But it was my understanding from this parent that 6 students already got the opportunity and got their certification. Why didn't the other 10 or 15, however many other kids didn't?
I can't address that based on the information, but I'll get the specifics from you and get right back to you on that.
Sandy said.
Well, Steve, it was my understanding by talking to Steve, the 6 that went out were currently employed under co-op and the AYES program. Their employers were really putting on a push. So they started with that initial group, but the plan is for all of the rest of the seniors to be in that schedule.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Do we have a date yet for these kids?
They will be doing it in August.
I mean, how fast can we
The answer would be yes, and I don't have it in front of me, but I will provide that date to you. We've met with that teacher now twice, so it is high on our radar screen. I'll get you a date.
All right, then the other questions I had, Sam, was on this renovation project. One thing that I noticed that it's in Chris's contingency plan about hiring a clerk of the works. I think that is very important that we seriously look at doing that. If this $32 million project does go, I know what our superintendent went through on a $15 million renovation project. And our clerk of the works, based on from what our business manager, she figures we paid our clerk of the works around 80 grand, and she figures he saved our district, the clerk of the works did, roughly $250,000. So the payoff is tremendous.
Steve, who was it?
Dennis, I can't remember his last name, but I can get that.
Yeah, we've got time. It's
Right, but I just think this board really needs to seriously consider hiring that clerk of the works. Especially during this, everything that's going on with the pandemic. You know, I can imagine Dr. Walker would be pulling his hair out, dealing with change orders and everything else. My other recommendation, based on what we just went through, like Chris said earlier, the biggest part of your project is your roof. We hired a roof consultant. And we figured we paid him by the hour. We figured we had about 20 grand into this guy, and he's a professional roof consultant. That's all he does. We figured he saved us over $100,000, and plus, we ended up with better roofing materials than what was originally put out to spec.
Now, did you hire him like clerk of the work just for the roof? Is that?
We hired that roof consultant just for the roof only. When the roof was complete, his job was complete. I highly recommend that we look at that. Also, the other thing that we just did with our project, and again, ours was only a $15 million project. And I think Mr. Berlin from Wattsburg chimed in with that question tonight about hiring ESCO. We did, and based on the information my business manager gave us today, she said by hiring ESCO, we saved $500,000 right off the top. So if we're looking at a $30 million project here, we could be looking at $1 million savings right off the top. And plus, when somebody asked about the guaranteed cost savings, we are saving over $1 million over a 20-year period, guaranteed. Now, the biggest thing with ESCO is also when it comes to change orders, because no matter what you think you got beautiful drawings and plans, nothing ever, trust me, we went through all of our contingency money. And I blame that a lot on the drawings that, to me, weren't complete. And that's my biggest fear, is dealing with change orders. And it just leaves such a wide open, money grabbing scheme is what I call it.
Oh, they're gonna do it just like our building.
Ramps,
like, that wall was going to be reinforced. You gotta put a whole beam in there, another concrete wall up.
Yep.
Like they said, that's the same thing as, when you remodel an existing school, you can run into those things.
But with ESCO, when it comes to changes, things they run into, they have to eat it. Because they stick by their bid. So if on a big project like this, say what ESCO does would be $1 million project, not only are you saving
who knows how much money, but you're also not paying a 6% commission factor on at $1 million. So the savings could be pushing $2 million by looking at a company like that to come in. What's it hurt to get another estimate on it?
I love that idea, quite honestly, to have a guy that does it, look at it. And in the design phase right now, I mean, the Pace boys at Farrell are the most qualified around here as far as I'm concerned, but, you know, and also our Thornton works just on a $1.5 million football field. If he would have looked at the drawings it would have saved us about 20 grand in change orders. Yep. Because just a guy that does it all day is gonna look at this and say, why don't you run that conduit in 4 different spots and have that planned out instead of doing it later, which cost us, you know, $4,000 instead of $500 initially.
My understanding is we're in the middle of a GISA project now. My understanding is they'll come in and take a look at what you have. That's a free quote.
Right.
I mean, it would not, I have some questions in how it applies to here, just because you are adding to your footprint. We've also had a conversation tonight about equipment. You know, some of that equipment, I think Jeff talked about, even technology, needing that power, those change. So if they're gonna guarantee savings because of energy consumption, yet you're constantly changing, that would be one of the questions I'd have for them. But if it doesn't cost anything, we're not stopping anything. Let them come in and review. It's another set of eyes. I would not necessarily be in favor of paying another architect or something.
No.
You know, we did that once, got a second look, but just to have somebody come in and look at what we have and see what the possibility, I think we could. I think that request could be reasonable. What does everybody else think on it? I think has everybody done some portion of a GISA project or?
Yeah, and I think there's also a danger to that. I mean, how do they get their savings? Insulate the phase. As we're finding out, you know, some of these GISA projects that were done in the past, they put things up that weren't quite right. And now we have to go back. So there's a danger to that because you lose control of it. Okay, we need this, they're gonna do that. Okay, it may not be exactly what we want, but they're in control of it. So there's a danger to that. Plus, if you really want that, if that happens now, we turn these guys off. I mean, I don't know how you could not turn them off and do something else. They're going on a path, but theoretically, we're paying them now. If we're doing that, if you want another contractor to guarantee your safety, which is fine. I mean, that's a good thing. There are some dangers to it, as I pointed out, but you stop what you're doing now and do it and do another type of, there's always different ways to do it. That's one. But we're paying these guys for doing that. Someone really wants to consider that, which because of the new construction, I'm not real sure it's going to work.
Right.
But if you're even thinking about it, we could be wasting money. So you got to think hard.
Other opinions? I don't know how many are out there doing it. You know, what we could do, we could ask some questions before next month, get a hold of a couple of them and say, hey, here's what we're looking at. Do they even think it's worth their time to come look? It may not be. If they,
don't jump on it.
but even with an addition and everything,
I'm sure they'll find a way because they're going to make money on it.
They're making money somehow. It looks good and smells good. They're making money somehow.
Yeah. See, they like to do, I mean, you can do what, 20% has nothing to do with energy savings. So we're getting some things done on our energy savings through that. They can do certain percentage up with that isn't even related to it.
We talk about life cycle costs. They're going to bring in the equipment that works, but won't, that satisfies some basic type requirement. But they're not going to give you maybe what you want. That's going to last you.
And they're not going to replace a lot of what they're doing. There is some replacing things, but a lot of what they do is they take this motor that he talked about running constantly, and they're putting in a motor that doesn't run constantly, and it's It's a little smaller based upon what, you know, new technology. It's a lot of what they're doing, so.
Then my last question is, at what point do we go back to our boards and say, we're going full bore $32 million project? Because the last time we went with this, I believe it was 6-8 months ago, we went back to our boards and presented that we were doing this in phases. Now, I think all the boards approved of that. But because I had our secretary look today, and all we approved 6 or 8 months ago was a 3-phase project.
First phase being the drawings that we got funding for, right? That was all that was approved. What are the other 2 phases?
Well, I thought that the construction project was gonna be broke into phases.
Gotcha.
Instead of doing all 32 million at once. And I thought that that's what was discussed at the PAC meeting as well. So I don't know of any other, is there any board here that said, gone to their board and said, are we supporting the $32 million renovation project?
Yes.
I mean, we have it in our budget, so.
Yes.
Because I know Union City has not done that.
Talked about a variety of different ways,
Right.
whether it was gonna be phases or, you know, I think what I was hearing was because we've got to go to all 11 school districts and get funding, that the issue came back to, you don't want to do that 3 times. You want to do it once. You know, if it takes a year and a half, it's done in phases here because we're not stopping education. They're going to have to do the new building. And so in essence, that is the phases, but the funding needs to be done once.
I think that kind of happened with how this project physically is going to get done. Yeah, there was talk of the phases going physically, but I think Chris came back and said, no, it's not going to happen overnight. Obviously, it's going to take a year and a half, but the phasing kind of worked its way out for some physical reasons.
I think that was the bigger quant, that was one of $50 million versus
Yeah.
We scaled it quite a bit back.
Yeah.
I think that it seems that the school district as a whole have adopted a resolution to approve the payment of the engineering up to the point of drawing. And that there are some school districts that have approved the overall project not to exceed $32 million. Not all school districts have approved the second resolution, but each district has approved up to the engineering drawing. And I think the goal is that the engineering drawings, then once completed, will be taken back to the boards with the estimates. And then you go to that next step. You approve the ultimate project. You talk about financing at that point because you'll have better estimates. You won't have bids, but you'll have better estimates.
That was my concern about the time schedule that Chris put together tonight. He doesn't want to go out to bid until February, but there's some selling that needs to happen to our school boards. What's the date of?
That's not in that. What he has is a pretty cut and dry deal with one board, and yeah, we can approve it.
But he wants to start in May. You know.
Yeah. I think that once you get these new set of drawings in September, I think if they're fundamental drawings, then you can take those back to your school boards. You can take these drawings back to the school boards, but they don't have the engineering part of it, and start talking about, okay, this is the project, this is where you're going to have an estimate. Okay, folks, how are each district going to finance it? We had a conversation about that about a year ago. But I think at that point, you really need to talk about financing and the overall project.
And now with this whole pandemic thing, who knows who's going to get what in their budgets?
And that's the issue. And then you talk about timing. But if you do it, you know, October, November, December, he wants to move forward and bid in January. So I think after you get these set of drawings, then I think it's time to go back to all the districts and start talking A, the project, B, finance.
Do we need to get the approval before we bid, or can we start the bidding process without approval yet? Because until you award bids, what's the?
Well, then in order to get bid documents, you're going to incur additional engineering costs. And so that's a different approval. You don't have that approval from all districts at this point in time.
So what we need to communicate, what Fred needs to communicate with Chris is, if we can stick to that September date, we can really work hard at sticking to the September date for that. Then when we've talked about the documents coming out of there, we really need for our boards for October and November, present to them, spend some time going over them, making sure we can get them all on board in order to really have resolutions from them in December so that we can then go out to bid January, February. I mean, realistically, that's what we need to do. It can't be just a September, we're this far along, and then January, okay, let's move. Well, that's gonna take a couple months.
And hopefully at that point you have a decent estimate that you can rely on for financing purposes. I realize it's all contingent upon the actual bids, and then, you know, but probably go into an estimate and use the estimate for the purpose of pinning down who's doing what, because some districts have their money in place, some districts are gonna borrow part, some districts are gonna borrow the whole thing. And so we need to pin that down.
Fortunately, Chris's assessments here are usually about 10 to 15% high. His projections on these estimates are, he always goes high. So that's good.
That bodes well for equipment.
Yes, get your list together.
Okay, the clerk of the works and those things, I think that's something we've just, I mean, that's gonna be in phase 3. If we get there, I think those are good points that we can. I'm glad to hear of a positive clerk of the works. We've had one case and it didn't turn out well. Not so much because of that.
Both fantastic.
That's good.
Same percent. We've had really good success with the guy we have right now. Outstanding.
And I would open up the idea of paying for a consulting fee to look at the drawings for 3 hours.
It'd be a little bit of money, but it could be well spent.
That $500 for 3 hours would be really beneficial.
I think Matt would probably agree out of Union City, I'd be in the fetal position without him. They're that valuable in terms of the knowledge and the information you need to make those finer decisions.
Especially a project as big as this is going to be. It's
the guy we were recommended was the Rob Estock, who was McDowell's facility manager. It was spectacular.
You certainly need one. They're invaluable.
No doubt.
We don't want to completely give them up, but we can let them go for a year.
We'd love them for a fee.
Yeah.
you're already paying for them.
Just keep them on retainer, let us use them. This is one of your buildings, remember?
Yes, that's right.
All right, good points.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Another question I have in front of me, Steve, the summer 2020 senior state inspection, safety inspection certification courses. We have one done. We have another that will be testing out on July 30th and 31st. And we have another course beginning in the first weeks of August. And so the class size is limited by the state to 6. So we simply have to manage flow.
Thank you. So it sounded there's a class they go through and then they test at the end of that class. Is that how that works?
Yeah, and there are 4 meetings here, and it appears to be roughly 20 hours of instruction and practice time.
So your point about the end of August was everybody complete and done by that point?
Well, everybody will have had the opportunity.
Okay. Good. I just said,
Brent, you said there's about 20 hours of actual more work that they do?
I'm just doing the addition right now. It looks like it's about 14.
Okay.
15. Sorry.
Become a night school, basically.
Well, these classes, because they're seniors, these are 1 to 5 and 2 to 5. And the classes that we're talking about right now were July 14, 16, 21, and 23 with testing on 30 and 31.
So if they start 1st of August, they're going to be done middle of August or so. Good. Can you follow up with Chris on just some of that conversation?
I've already got to know.
Yeah. And do we, We want to reach out to anybody in Gisa and talk to them or leave that alone? What do we want to do? Sound like a couple that were reach out, one that's kind of probably leave it alone at this point.
I would leave it alone because I know that some of those things that bother me is when we did a couple of our places. It seemed like they come back every 2 years and want you to do a change.
Just say branch.
Well, yeah, but then you have, it's always loan against your electric bill. I mean, luckily, they screwed up when they had to pay for the lights on our gym. One fell and started the floor on fire. And
Good.
well, hit it with, they weren't supposed to hit, but there isn't a basketball court. They're going to be basketballs on it. They hit it, knocked it down, and started the floor on fire. I mean, that was nice.
It's got a problem.
Water-based lacquer on those these days.
Well,
I move for adjournment.
Okay, we'll do that. One more thing. We did get a letter from the state and they are going to move forward with the roundabout. And I think you're going to be our representative. You already thought, yeah, you guys will figure that out, but we'll see what they're going to have an appraiser. I think that's the next step is appraisal.
The appraisal done.
It's already done?
Oh. They're going to bring us.
I'm sorry, what was this?
That was the data of the RCTC fingerprinting.
How many fingerprints and why they're here?
All right. Have a good night.
So like you said.
All right, Jim's motion, we adjourn. Everybody's gonna leave, so we're good with
He
that.
said yes on the way.
So what, are they going to have another one?
Thank you all.
Hearings for the PennDOT, for the roundabout?
No, Fred and I will meet.
I didn't drink, by the way.